Yeah, see, okay, sorry, I do see his number there. Yeah, all right. So, um, so we should be good to go then. Thank you. So I would like to start by calling the meeting to order and welcoming everyone who has joined us, including our great turnout from Whitestone ratepayers. And as is our custom, we'll start the meeting with the playing of our national anthem, following which I will read our Indigenous Land Acknowledgement Statement. The municipality of Whitestone recognizes all of Canada resides on traditional, unceded, and/or treaty lands of the Indigenous people of Turtle Island. We recognize our municipality on the Robinson-Huron Treaty Territory is home to many past, present, and future Indigenous families. This acknowledgement of the land is a declaration of our commitment and collective responsibility to reconcile the past and to honor and value the culture, history, and relationships we have with one another. Thank you. I will now ask the councillors to declare if any of them has a pecuniary interest in matters before us this evening.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, I don't think it's a pecuniary interest, but when it comes to item 7.1, I will be turning my audio and my video off. So, but I would ask, I know I talked to you this afternoon, I would ask that when we get to 7.1, that if I could make a brief statement beforehand, and then I'll sort of exit the meeting until it's over. So until that portion is over, not the entire.
Okay, thank you. Thank you
Okay.
for that declaration, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you.
Anything else? Anybody else? All right, then. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda, and it is as presented, with the addition of a letter that came in, the two correspondents very, after the agenda had been circulated, and it's in relationship to the Parry Sound, the new Parry Sound Mega School. So we're hoping to include that in tonight's agenda, even though it came in at the last minute. Could I get a mover and seconder, please?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Gorman Matthews, seconded by.
I'll second it, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Any discussion? there any opposition to this being our agenda? If not, the agenda is carried. Thank you. Matters arising from closed session. Council had a closed session just prior to the supper hour, at which we considered a few administrative matters. We have in front of us for approval the minutes of the closed session meeting on January 18th, 22nd. Could I get a mover and seconder to approve those minutes, please?
I'll move, Councilor McEwen.
Thank you, Councilor McEwen, seconded by
I'll second it, Councillor Lamb.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Lamb. Is there any opposition to approving those minutes? Okay, hearing none, they're approved. Next on our agenda is, well, there are two presentations and slash delegations. The first is from our Integrity Commissioner, and it's in response to a complaint involving Councillor Lamb, as you've already heard. So I'm pleased at this point to welcome Mr. Harold Elston, who is our Integrity Commissioner. And I see, Harold, you've got your video on. Your face is a little dark. I don't know if there's any way you can get in front of get the light.
I can try. I'm sorry, I'm in a hotel room, Your Worship. So but if you just give, oh, here, I have my assistant here. We might be able to, if that's any better. I'm not well, I can sort of see myself there. Sorry. Is that any better, sir?
Yes, it is. Thank you. You were sort of in the dark there for a minute, but in any case, I'm going to turn the proceedings over to Mr. Elston and invite him to comment on his report or present his report. And when he's finished, I will open up the floor for questions from councillors, questions or comments from councillors.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor?
Yes?
Yeah, am I allowed to make a statement and then I'll turn my mic off and stuff or not?
Well, could you wait until after he's made his presentation and I open the floor up?
Sure.
Or-
If after he's made his presentation, if I could just make a statement before we get into other comments and things like that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure,
That'd
we'll
be-
allow that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Maybe someone can text me when he's finished making his presentation. I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Commissioner Elston, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, sir, and members of council. I know you've all have a copy of my report, and I don't intend to sort of work through it in any great detail. Just to say, I think two incidents, two separate meetings, the June 4th meeting of this committee that you struck to look at a couple of specific bylaws, and then at the October 6th meeting. I spoke to really everybody involved. I think I had a very good sense of what happened at the meeting. And as you'll see in the discussion part of my report, I talk a little bit about everybody needing to really understand the various roles of the people on the municipal stage. And, the role of councillors really is to be policymakers, deciding which services the municipality is going to apply, and sort of generally setting the agenda, and then your staff takes over and implements it. So they do the research, they come back to you, they make recommendations. And that's under the Municipal Act. So it's, it's one thing in theory and to have it set out in the legislation, but in practice, we all know, and as I say, in a rural municipality like Whitestone, where you've got, such a large geographic area, a pretty small population, and, a lot of really committed people. And so the natural inclination is to put people together and work to try and solve your problems. And, I call it sort of an all hands on deck approach. And there's nothing wrong with it, except, in this instance where you sort of mix members of council and members of staff on a committee in meetings regularly, dealing with, not particularly contentious issues. This, as everyone knows, was a dog licensing bylaw. But it just, unless everybody really remembers their role, it can lead to problems. So, and I say that because, first of all, the Act requires it. But second of all, and I think this is just so important, that you folks are making decisions on behalf of the public. And you have other things going on in your lives, whether you're working or have other pursuits. It's not a full-time job. You need your staff to come forward and provide you with research, suggestions, recommendations on all manner of things. And you need your staff to be able to come in complete comfort that they can give you their best advice. And if there is any sort of unease on their part, I'll say, it tends to sort of compromise the advice that you'll get, which, in turn can lead to problems in the decisions you make. So it's a fundamental part of municipal governance structure. And, as I say, credit to the township for bringing people with skill sets and experience together. But I think in this case, there was a conflict, and I don't think there's any long-lasting damage done here. You have two very solid employees. I've spoken with them both. I think it was upsetting, but I think they've recovered. As far as I know, everybody is carrying on business as usual. So, and as I say, it's a bit of a cliche, but I'm sort of hoping it's a bit of a teaching moment for everybody, just to, sort of understand the roles and the danger. And so hence my recommendation of a reprimand, which is really just council's way of saying, we have to treat our staff well. It's difficult to find good people, and you hate to lose them if there's an atmosphere that makes it difficult for them to stay. So subject to any questions you folks may have, that's all I thought I'd say at this point. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Commissioner Elston. Councillor Lamb, I will give you the opportunity to respond first if you wish, and then I
Sure.
will ask other councillors to question.
Thank you. I'm getting messages from people that Mr. Elston's done. So anyway, I didn't know how to mute myself, so I did hear from Harold. So, and I want to thank you, Harold, for saying what you did. And I was glad to hear that there's no lasting sort of thing here. I just want to say kind of that, as most people know, I'm kind of a passionate and outspoken person about matters that impact our community. And I think this is that being known, I kind of think that's what makes me an effective leader on council for the past 14 years. And yes, I do speak loudly, so I apologize to that. Most people don't know I have a bit of a hearing impairment, but I speak loudly. And if people take offense to that, I apologize. The report, I think is, in my opinion, a little bit out of context and maybe inaccurate in some areas. I know it's hard for the integrity commissioner to decide on these things when he wasn't in the meeting and there's no audio tape of the meeting, right? So the only person in the October meeting particularly who attended the meeting and is not either a complainant on this or a defendant, as I am, is Councillor Woods. And I'm sure that the Councillor Woods will speak about the meetings as he saw them. Not for me to say, he can say whatever he wants to say. Having said that, I want to kind of take the high road here. I realize the council can reprimand me as a caution, and I'll accept that. In order, as I say, to take the high road, I've already resigned from the rental bylaw review committee, and I've resigned from the dog bylaw committee. And I will also voluntarily resign at this time from the Committee of Adjustment and the 911 committee and the Thrift Shop committee. Further, as many in the community know, I've been very passionate and a leader on council when it comes to our library, which I'm very proud of. My wife and I have worked very hard on the library and getting us to where we are today. I will resign from that committee if I'm requested to do so by the library board. In terms of communications with the two complainants, I will refrain from any contact except through email for the remainder of the term of council. So, that's my step forward, I guess, to hopefully resolve this. I've looked at some motions that have come out today that will come out in the next few minutes, which are rather bothersome to me, because not only have there been decisions to, at least in terms of the motions, take me off these committees, but also replacements have been appointed in the motions, and I find that bothersome because I wasn't part of any meetings, and as far as I know, Councillor Woods wasn't part of any meetings, and he's not even mentioned as any replacements. So that's
excuse me, Councillor Lamb, you're getting ahead of us on the agenda. If you don't mind, if you could simply confine. We're at the stage where we're
sure.
Asking questions concerning.
Sure. I know
Commissioner's report.
I know you don't. This is me. I know you don't like. And I appreciate it. I'm done. Okay, I'm done. I just find it interesting that the decisions seem to be made before anyone even heard from Councillor Woods. So anyway, I'm done. Finished. Thank you. That's the end of it. Thank you.
Okay, I will. Thank you. I'll ask other councillors if they have questions for the Integrity Commissioner about the report specifically, or comments that they wish to make at this time. When that's done, we will then entertain some motions regarding to receive the report and to take any further action. So we're not into that section yet.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Woods.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Woods.
I can go first, or would the other councillors like to speak first? Do they have anything that they would say, and I can wait till the end?
You can go ahead, Councillor Woods.
I'm going to be talking for a bit because I'm going to talk to this whole report. So I mean, I don't mind going last if that would be in the best interest of everyone else in the meeting tonight.
Well, just so you understand, the purpose is to get
to acknowledge the report and give my points for
the purpose is to get further insight from our Integrity Commissioner. It's into what he's said or not said, It's not to debate the report. That, I mean, you can express your opinions about that when we come to the sort of penalty discussion part, but right now we're just, if we could just confine it to, not I don't think that we're here to to have a debate.
So are my version of the events that happens at both of these meetings that they're of no value? Because that's the opinion that I have.
Well, could you do it, if you're going to do it, could you do it briefly, please? So that like you said, you were going to be talking for a long time. I have to, we have a very full
Mr.
agenda.
Mayor, I realize, but this is a very important situation, which is why I was asking if the other councillors would like to speak first. I'm just trying to be,
I
nice.
understand. Well, you were the first person to go, so please proceed and to just be brief. Thanks.
Sure. Okay. I mean, the first thing, I mean, Harold, I had the opportunity to speak with you for about half an hour on wouldn't be this past Friday, but the Friday previous. I thought we had a good discussion. I gave you my views as to what happened in these meetings as, an independent person in the meetings that has nothing to gain by, calling what I see, what happened in these meetings. I have to admit, after I read your report, I got the impression that your report was written before you even talked to me, and it didn't matter what I said. And that's my honest opinion. A lot of this is taken out of context, and I personally feel that this entire situation could have been handled at a staff level, with a basic conversation between the parties involved in concert with our CAO and our mayor. I think it would have been a much better solution. It wouldn't have cost taxpayers a heck of a lot of money. And then if it didn't get worked out at that level, then by all means, fill out an integrity commissioner complaint if that's what the parties involved thought they needed to do. But I think we skipped a step, a very important step, where we sit down and we discuss things like professional adults when there's a difference of opinion. The June 4th meeting, it says in this report that Councillor Lamb directed our bylaw officer, Paul Rossiter, how to do his job. And that's, in my opinion, that is not what happened. Councillor Lamb, he explained why he didn't think that all council or all taxpayers in this community should have to pay if someone's dog gets picked up, because our bylaw officer, Paul Rossiter, doesn't feel that he has to charge. And Councillor Lamb simply said, well, the bylaw is written, it says there's a $50 fee applied. How many times have you had this problem?
Councillor Woods,
Mr. Mayor, come on. Let me say my piece, please.
Well, but you can't
George,
rehash the entire.
I'm reading through the report, George, and I'm pulling out points.
Well,
okay, the same way that you do when you like to explain everything. I'm just giving people my version of what happened with this complaint. I'm the only independent person involved, and apparently my opinion means nothing. And that's what I have a problem with.
If you cannot rehash at a level of detail all of the things that were the subject of the complaint. We are not here to do that. We are simply here. If you want to ask,
where's the rule that says I'm not allowed to give my opinion on what happened in the meeting that none of you were involved in, George?
If you want, I'm
asking you.
I am chairing the meeting, and I have the authority to rule you out of order.
So you're going to call me out of order for trying to give my opinion on what happened on these events that are in question. That's an integrity commissioner complaint.
Councillor Woods, you can give your opinion without dragging us through every item that is in the report. The commissioner is our independent investigator. He's provided his report. You can ask him questions about the report if you wish, but to go through and try to refute his report line by line, we will be here all night. And at the end of the day,
it wasn't line by line, Mr. Mayor.
We'll have accomplished nothing. Please just stick to the high level points that you wish to make, or the questions you wish to ask him.
Well, I was under the impression that Mr. Elston wasn't answering questions, because that's what he said in other previous integrity commissioner complaints. He was just here to give his report. I was just trying to give what I felt, what was going on with this report. And I'll keep it real clear then. As far as I'm concerned, and I was the only independent person there, I have nothing to gain from this, okay? Some people's feelings might have been hurt. Nobody was bullying anyone. Nobody was outwardly being derogatory or yelling and screaming. Councillor Lamb didn't say shut up, but he did say, please be quiet and stop interrupting me. And rightfully so, as far as I'm concerned. The meeting and the agenda package that was made for the meeting, I didn't even get included. There wasn't a copy made for me because I'm the councillor that doesn't count. Okay, and this is, you know, we're not
Okay,
equals
Councillor-
in that meeting. No, Mr.
Yep.
Mayor, why is it you don't want me to say my piece? You wouldn't let me say my piece today when you called me. Nobody even bothered to talk to me about this, and now you're trying to stifle my remarks. Why? Why
I
are
am-
we not going to discuss this?
I am trying to maintain order in the meeting, and you are going off to discuss other matters that don't concern the subject in front of us at all. So you
The
have to,
subject in front of us,
if
Mr.
you
Mayor.
keep
The
doing
tensions
that,
ran high between everybody in the meeting. The tensions were running high. Okay?
fair
my
fair
opinion-
enough. Ask a question, please.
I don't have a question. I have statements to make. I
Well,
have questions at the end once we get to the motion.
but why don't
Am I
you?
allowed to talk?
Why didn't you leave them till then? Then, if you want to, you're trying to address the outcome of the next part of the discussion, not the report. We're focused on the commissioner's report here at this point.
So you want me to wait until we're going to talk about the proposed motion to give you all my points, or am I just not allowed to give my points?
I'm
I'm
sorry. I
asking
just
you
keep
a question here.
repeating myself, and I don't seem like you're hearing what I'm saying. We are not here at this stage of the moment to discuss what happens as a result of this report. We have the report in front of us. We have the commissioner here at our disposal if we as councillors wish to ask him questions or for clarification about the report. Once that is done, then we will move to consideration of what actions we take in response to the report. I'm just trying to keep
So am I
things.
allowed to make a comment about the report then? Am I allowed to I'll give you a basic summary on what I think of this report. I won't pull out any more points right now.
If you could do it, if you could just make if you want to make a very high level comment similar to what Councillor Lamb made, that's fine, but not, we out of consideration for our integrity commissioner, I don't think this is
Okay, I have one
fair.
quick question then about the report. Then a direct question just about the report. Why was my testimony not included in a report if there was a decision made? And I was an independent person in the meeting. There's my question. Is that okay?
Yes, you can ask that question. Commissioner Elson, do you
Yes,
have a response?
Certainly, yeah, through you, your worship. Well, first of all, I am bound by the Municipal Act to preserve secrecy over all the information that comes to me. So I generally make it a habit not to mention people's names or detail the evidence that they gave me. That's just, it allows me to talk to people, to accept their evidence, to assure them that I'll keep what they've said confidential, anonymous, but it lets me gather all the evidence. And I think I do in the report, say that I had spoken with people on both sides of it who were there. And so I certainly remember Councillor Woods, our conversation, and at the end of the day, I have to choose which version of events to accept. And the difficulty here is it would be, in my view, exceedingly unfair to call on your bylaw enforcement officer or your deputy clerk in this session to repeat their evidence. So I accept that maybe not everybody is happy with my finding. It's just my job to weigh the evidence. I certainly did, and I preferred the evidence of the deputy clerk and the bylaw enforcement officer. So I thought I didn't need to mention your name or detail your evidence, but at the end of the day, as we say, I preferred the evidence of the other two. And so, I certainly wasn't trying to suggest or to, make it seem that we hadn't talked. I certainly had your evidence, and I think I made sort of a reference to speaking to other people on both sides of it, but I didn't feel it necessary to go into the details of what you said and why I, was going to accept your deputy clerk and the bylaw officer's version of it. So it's a tough job. I get it right sometimes, most of the time. But the hardest thing in the world, I think, for any trier of fact is to sort of assess what took place in a meeting in a room when there's no recording. I wasn't there. I have to recreate history as best I can. And I have done this for a while. And, after speaking to everybody in the room and having Councillor Lamb's detailed submission, I wanted, to have all of that included to give Councillor Lamb, his due in the report. But at the end of the day, I believed what Mr. Rossiter and Ms. Mines were saying. So I don't know what more I can say. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you.
I have one more question if I'm allowed, Mr. Mayor. It's just about what Mr. Elston said. It's a real quick one.
All right.
Keeping these matters private. So, Mr. Elston, I'm under the impression, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that when an integrity commissioner's complaint is made, the parties involved are supposed to keep the fact that they filed a complaint confidential. Is that correct?
Well, generally through you, Your Worship, what I generally say is don't talk about this with other people. So it's the same. I mean, this is at a much, sort of lower level, but, in a court of law, you don't want all the witnesses talking to each other. So generally speaking, people who are going to be witnesses and that I'm going to be talking to, I would prefer they didn't talk to each other. Both the complainants were comfortable with me putting their names forward. I think in the situation, really I had to name them and they understood that, and I think they're okay with it. So I don't know specifically, what you're referring to. What we're trying to protect against is witnesses talking ahead of time and maybe filling in the blanks for each other, or sort of somehow influencing their testimony. I want everybody to come to me without having talked about it and give me their best recollection. So that's sort of generally the rule, and I'm not sure what specifically you're referring to. Thank you.
Would you agree with me then if I said that a counselor calling me and asking me about an integrity commissioner complaint filed against Councillor Lamb more than a month ago, that a counselor outside of this situation knew the details of the integrity commissioner complaint? Would you say that that is wrong and shouldn't have happened?
I'm not sure I'd say that is wrong. It's, I think it's a small municipality. I think it was pretty common knowledge that a complaint had been made, and I'm sure most people on council knew that it was out there. I think the fact of the complaint is in and of itself isn't a real problem.
Okay, well, okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. I just think it's funny that I asked Councillor Lamb about it. He asked me how I knew about it, and it wasn't from him because he hadn't told me anything. As we all know, right, I do talk to Councillor Lamb, as I do talk to the rest of the council when I think we need to discuss something. But that's okay, Mr. Mayor. You don't want me to talk anymore and rehash things. I'll just wait until the motion, and I'll step aside and let my other councilors ask questions.
Thank you. Are there other questions from Councillor Lamb or Councillor McEwen? I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Elson, thanks for coming up and reporting to us this evening, or down there to here. I have a little bit of a concern when you qualify that Councillor Lamb contravened sections 5152, 61662 of our conflict of our code of conduct act. And then when you get down to the recommendation, which I feel is somewhat light. And the reason I say that is because I feel very, very serious about this, and I feel for the Lamb family as well as the people who are being victimized, I guess, if you will, by these actions. Could you explain a little bit on your recommendation, which was basically to just give him, you know, or ask him to take it as a teachable moment, as you wrote there, and just we're almost bypassing the very seriousness of this whole thing of being bullying and abusive action and all that kind of thing. Could you comment on that subject a little bit further, please?
Yes, thank you, Councillor, and through you, Your Worship. Well, you know, under the Municipal Act, there's just two choices. So strictly speaking, I can either recommend a reprimand or I can recommend suspension of pay for up to 90 days. And so I've just found the suspension of pay is really not that effective. I know that you folks aren't paid a great deal of money. My sense of these things is the public nature of the report, the discussion we're having this evening. You know, that's a difficult thing for, I'm sure, for Councillor Lamb to go through. And I only make a recommendation. It's entirely up to council. You folks are the ones who can impose any sanction, you know, within limits that you like. So in this case, as I say, I struggled with it. I didn't see that it would really add much if I had said, you know, dock his pay for a month or 2 months or 3 months. I happen to know that he'd resigned from the two committees, so I thought I didn't need to say that. He had, you know, taken that step. At the end, you know, as you see in my report, he had some complimentary things to say. I know that everybody's moved on and working together. And so you know, I could be wrong, but I didn't see that I needed to come out with, you know, anything, you know, more heavy-handed, for lack of a better way to put it. But you know, you folks, it's your call, your municipality, and I try and give you an understanding of the code and what happened and why what I think might be a good sort of sanction, but it's at the end of the day, it's up to you folks. So you're not bound by what I say, and you know, I would rather err on the side of a lighter punishment, hoping that there will be you know, a change. It seems to me that's, you know, it's just, maybe it's just my nature, but I would rather take a little softer approach, hoping that the overall experience will lead to, you know, a better going forward, better relationships, which is really what it's all about. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, sir, but that's my thinking.
Okay, it's a little more qualification. Anyway, I have one other point. That was, I guess, from your statement earlier, and you mentioned it again now, as people are moving on. This is very hurtful and damaging to individuals when they're in this situation. And filing is not an easy thing for anybody to do, anyone to do. I've experienced that once in my life myself, and it puts you through some really, really gut wrenching times, and it lasts a long time sometimes. And it affects families, it affects a lot of people. So I'm not sure how you can sense that they're moving on when they're still going to work in the environment of Whitestone and such without some real necessary, let's say, change, reprimands, such. Any comments on that?
Well, through you, your worship, only to say that, it's council's call on that. And I think really your residents are looking to you folks to see what you do with this. So I think I've tried to explain, where I was coming from. When I say people have moved on, I just know that everybody is, still communicating, working together. There doesn't seem to be any, real sort of trauma from it, but I could be wrong.
Okay. All right, I appreciate it. It's not easy for you and us or them. It's a real big deal. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you. I will ask if anyone else has a comment, and I think the only person who hasn't spoken is Councillor Gorham Matthews. I don't know. Councillor,
no, I
if
don't
you
have
have
any
any questions or
for-
comments? No, you said no?
I have no questions for Mr. Alston.
All right. Well, thank you. Then I think that concludes this particular portion of the what I'll call the delegation portion. There are a couple of motions, and the first one hopefully is straightforward. It's really just a formality. We need a motion that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby receives the report from Harold Elston, Integrity Commissioner, dated February 9th, 2022, on the matter of complaints against Councillor Lamb for information. Could I get a mover and seconder for that motion, please?
I'll move, Councillor Woods.
Thank you. Seconded by?
I'll second
second.
Councilor McEwen.
All right, I got Councillor McEwen. Is there any opposition to that motion? All right, thank you. I think by virtue of the fact that the report has been made public, it's as is required, by the way, by the Municipal Act. We don't have the option of some people have suggested that we maybe should have had the option of dealing with it in closed session, but we don't. And so I'll take this opportunity to thank our Integrity Commissioner, Harold Elston, in case he wishes to go on with that, without other things he can. And of course, sir, you're certainly welcome to stay and listen to the discussion that follows.
Well, thank you, your worship. If I may be excused, I think I'll leave you folks to it, but thank you for listening to me this evening, sir. Good night.
You're welcome, and thanks for attending.
Good night.
All right, so we have the possibility now, of course, of discussing a penalty, and there are there are some motions that normally there is a suggestion that has been made by the Integrity Commissioner, and there may be some other motions that councillors wish to make. I wonder if perhaps I should just open the floor. I can read a I can read a motion that I have that is if you like, and see if there's a mover and seconder, or if one of the councilors wishes to move a motion, we can entertain that, whichever wishes to move it, whichever. Do you want me to read a motion?
Mr. Mayor, could I ask a quick question?
You may.
Is it the motion that was emailed to us earlier today? That motion, I think.
Yes, it was there was a draft motion that was circulated to councilors for information.
Why don't we read that one then?
All right, I'll read it to you. And I'll see if there's a mover and seconder. Whereas the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone is committed to maintaining a corporate culture that is safe and respectful for all staff and volunteers. And whereas the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone is legally and morally obligated to protect its staff and volunteers from harassment, intimidation, bullying, and other forms of abuse. Therefore, the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby imposes the following penalties. And there are 3 of them. The first one is Councillor Lamb is reprimanded for his contravention of the municipality's code of conduct. And as you know, that was the recommendation of the Integrity Commissioner. Number 2, effective immediately and for the balance of the current council term, Councillor Lamb's appointments to the following boards and committees are rescinded. And there are 4 of those: the board of the Whitestone Library and Technology Center, the Municipality of Whitestone's Committee of Adjustment, the Municipality of Whitestone's Thrift Shop Committee, and the West Perry Sound 911 Committee. And the third element of this motion is that effective immediately and for the balance of the current council term, Councillor Lamb is forbidden to communicate in person or by telephone with members of Whitestone municipal staff, including contract employees. So those are the sanctions that are being suggested. Is there a mover and seconder for this motion?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Are
you going to read part 3?
Well, that is a motion. That motion only comes into effect if this motion I just read is passed. They're 3 separate motions, right? First motion was to receive the Integrity Commissioner's report. We passed that. Now we're discussing penalty, and then obviously if we do the things, then it would be appropriate then to appoint other people to those responsibilities. That's what part 3 is about. But we only need that if we pass, once we pass number 2. So just for the sake of simplicity, I didn't read it, but.
Sure. Okay. Well,
right.
I'll move for discussion purposes.
Okay, so Councillor Woods has moved. Is there a seconder?
I'll second Councillor McEwen.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. That now opens the matter up for discussion. And go ahead, please. Who wants to go first?
Could I say something, Mr. Mayor? Councillor Woods?
You may.
I mean, looking at these, the first one, Councillor Lamb reprimanded for the contravention of the municipal code of conduct. That's what the Integrity Commissioner suggested, right? And previous Integrity Commissioner complaints, we went with what the Integrity Commissioner had suggested, right? That's, to me, okay, if we want to give him a reprimand, sure. He's already said that he would remove himself from all other boards. So I don't see why we would consider doing the other ones here. If we do decide, especially point 3 in this motion, the effective immediately and for the balance of the current term of Councillor Lamb is forbidden to communicate in person or by telephone with members of Whitestone municipal staff, including contract employees. I personally think that's kind of heavy-handed. I mean, if we pass that, we're basically handcuffing Councillor Lamb from doing his job, and supporting and conveying the concerns of members that have elected him 4 consecutive terms. If he can't talk to somebody and ask them a question on the phone, or if he goes into the dump, this effectively is saying he couldn't go up to one of the dump attendants and ask him where he has to put this piece of garbage. If he can't have any communication with any employees, to me, that's pretty heavy-handed. He's already said that he wouldn't communicate with the 2 people involved in the complaint, and he hasn't, other than by email, up until this point. So I don't understand why we would go that far. That's my opinion. I mean, maybe others think differently, but I think that's a bit heavy-handed.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. I take it from your comment, Councillor Woods, that you're not objecting to parts I and II, the first 2 parts. You're objecting to the third part, III. Is that correct?
Well, no, I'd be objecting to point 2 and point 3. I mean, he's already taken himself off of these boards, or said that he will take himself off those boards willingly. So I don't know why we would have to have a motion to make him do it if he's already said that he's going to do it. I mean, to give him a reprimand, sure, let's give him a reprimand. That's what the Integrity Commissioner said we should do. And that's what we followed in previous complaints, right? We never went over the score in any other Integrity Commissioner complaints. And I think he deserves the same respect.
Okay, thank you. I hear you. Are there other discussion from other councillors?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councillor McEwen.
Yeah, a little further to Councillor Woods there on number 3. I can see it staying in there, but I'd like to see maybe his communication would be, say, with the CAO and mayor, who would direct it and obtain information from staff for him. I have to agree that there has to be, if he's going to stay on as a councillor representing your peers, there has to be some linkage somehow to at least get information back to him or such. So that would be my suggestion on that one, to after including contract employees, except with communication through our CAO. And the reason I suggest you, Mr. Mayor, is that if there is discussion or something happens that there is communication with the CAO, I think under the circumstances, there should be a second presence, which would be you. So that would be my comment on that one. Number 2, I think it should be left all inclusive as it is for all the committees, considering the seriousness of it. And part of the reason I say that is, sure, we've had other integrity commissioners' reports, but they haven't come close to a code of conduct scenario such as this one, in my opinion. So, and secondly, if you look through our code of conduct and read it carefully and look at the penalties, it's very specific that council has the right to penalize, and that's under that specific code of conduct. So I see no problem with leaving it as it is and adding just the mayor and our CAO. So that's just my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Gorham Matthews?
Yeah, I understand some of the frustration that we're adding more to this reprimand than we have in other instances. But I believe that we have an obligation to our staff. And before we get into a situation where we end up having the occupational health and safety involved or anything like that, we need to demonstrate that we take seriously our staff's mental health and ability to work in a safe environment that's respectful and free of harassment and bullying. I've looked at quite a few case studies of other integrity commissioner reports that have been along the same lines of council members or a lot of mayors that are crossing the line, they're harassing employees and such. And they've been moved out of buildings so that they have no contact with staff. I think we have to demonstrate that we respect the veracity of our staff's complaints. And even though our integrity commissioner says that there's no lasting harm, we have to remember that we have a very small working environment. And I think we have to respect that we need to create this environment that retains our employees and respects their ability to do their job. And moving forward, I don't know what kind of policy we have, but I would suggest that after the next election, regardless of any of the candidates that are successful experience, that we do new council training for everyone. I did it when I got in at the last term, and it really does define your role, and it defines your relationships with employees. And basically when I did it, I'm not supposed to direct anything other than through the CAO. That's what it outlines in the guidance. And I know with a small municipality, we cross those lines, and we're quite often it's easy to email or ask something of staff for the sake of getting things done quickly. But the reality is everything should go through our CAO, and training would reinforce this with new council again. And I would also remind everyone that when we appointed Mr. Elston as our integrity commissioner, we did decline his offer to train us. In retrospect, after the last 6 months, that was probably an error on our part. And I would suggest that moving into next December, that we format some type of policy with our CAO that will provide new training and training for Mr. Elston, so we don't get in this situation again. I just feel that it all boils down to improper conduct, this harassment situation of an individual directed at another individual that was our staff member in a work environment. And the individual ought to have known that their remarks or behavior could cause offense, and general comments that demean or belittle or cause personal humiliation in a professional capacity can't be tolerated. We need to support our staff. So that's why I support limiting the staff contact, and I support the removal of the committees as well, because they all involve staff and contact with volunteers as well. So that's my feeling on it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, could I say something else, or did you want to go? I read the code of conduct, section 12, on what we should be doing for penalties, and that's all I was going to refer to. It gives us 3 options, and none of them says anything about not letting Councillor Lamb talk to any employee. Like, essentially, what you're saying is, when we go into live council meetings, Councillor Lamb isn't going to be allowed to be there because there's going to be staff members there. I mean,
No.
Miss Mates is the deputy clerk. She's in meetings, and if he's not allowed, you can't even say, "Hi, Judy, how are you doing today?" But really, you guys don't see how this is a little bit heavy-handed?
Well, perhaps perhaps we could come to. I was going to speak to that in a minute or so. I just want to be clear that as as our integrity commissioner pointed out, there are two specific penalties that are for violations of code of conduct that are referred to in the municipal act, and those are the reprimand and the forfeiture of 3 months' pay, basically. The remedies or sanctions that are proposed in item 2 are things that are within the power of council to do at any time. Okay, council has the ability to appoint anyone to a committee or a responsibility for a period of time, and to rescind that appointment at any time it wishes. So that is part of a normal power that the council has under the municipal act, and is not specifically tied to any infraction. These things happen all the time for various reasons. The part 3 is, again, council has the ability to prescribe how councilors will interact with staff. And I think that I think we can certainly have some discussion around that. I want to just make very quickly a couple of general comments about this. The concern here is not a focus on, if you like, on retribution or on punishment so much as it is on the protection of our staff, which, as Councillor Gorham Matthews pointed out, we are legally obligated to do this, and morally as well, but we can be subject to complaints and findings against us for violations of Occupational Health and Safety Act, which covers harassment, and over the years has become more and more detailed in terms of how it covers harassment. And again, if you look at judgments or cases that have been reported on that, you'll see that we have to have a concern about whether or not our employees feel threatened or feel that they can't do their jobs for fear of reprisal and so on. And that's, I think that is a very serious concern. It's also a concern. It's also a broader concern, I would say. It isn't just employees. It's also volunteers who serve on committees. They have a right to be treated with respect, and they have a right to be, aggressive behavior in committee meetings and other kinds of meetings, even amongst volunteers, is not acceptable. And there is a risk to our corporate culture and our culture of a community that frankly concerns me. I mean, I have absolutely no problem with people disagreeing about anything. And I understand that folks have frustrations about things not getting done the way they had expected and so on. And I experience those things all the time. But that does not give us a right to turn on other people, to attack them personally, to defame them or belittle them or attempt to intimidate them or shut them down or any of those kinds of things. And the risk is that if we don't move aggressively to nip that kind of behavior in the bud, what will happen is that we will have other people emulating it. Both volunteers and staff will say, well, okay, they can get away with it, I can get away with it too. And I can tell you that from time to time we get some indications that people other folks are are picking up on this and thinking, hey, maybe this is how you get stuff done. You know, you yell a little bit louder and you belittle somebody who's isn't doing what you think they should be doing, and so on. And as far as I'm concerned, that folks, that has to stop. We will all suffer as a community if we allow this to get to this kind of behavior to continue and don't get it out of our culture. So that's what it's about. What this whole thing is about, and it's I think gives us an opportunity to try to make sure that people understand very clearly what their roles are and what the scope of their authority is going forward. And you'll know that you will recall that Commissioner Elston commented on this in his remarks. He said, you know, we're all trying to work together as a team, and that's the goal. We're a small municipality. We can't afford a huge bureaucracy where you know, everybody, there's somebody whose job it is to do everything, and you know, the council just comes and rubber stamps reports from staff. I can tell you, being on the council involves a fair amount of work behind the scenes, trying to figure things out, trying to figure out what we need to do next, trying to make sure we've covered off all the requirements that are legally on us, and so on. So, you know, we've got to have a collaborative working relationship with our staff, and they have to be able to come to work knowing that they're not going to be not in a they're not going to be bullied or disrespected or anything of that sort. So that's, again, going to the concern with the third provision. The goal clearly is not to prevent Councillor Lamb from doing his job as a councillor. He needs to have access to information. He needs to have he needs to be able to request, you know, the things we put on the agenda, and request information and do various things. The thought was that rather than having him call up individual members of staff and ask for things, and sometimes the ask, in my experience, the ask's a demand. Is sometimes those could be communicated by those requests could be communicated by email. And certainly if he needs to talk to somebody about a particular issue to get more background, the CAO can facilitate that. I can facilitate that. But I'm talking about trying to eliminate situations where we have this you know, the face-to-face contact that in a situation where maybe nobody is monitoring, and there may be a temptation for things to get out of hand. So that's and of course part two deals, if Councillor Lamb, as he suggested, is willing to step down from his appointments, then I guess that would eliminate a lot of them. But we still don't. I think there should become some constraints around him simply phoning up individuals on our staff. So maybe there's a better way that part number 3 can be worded. I don't know if someone has a suggestion. We could perhaps take an amendment to that part of the motion. And if I don't know, perhaps Councillor Lamb has a suggestion. I don't know. I don't want to prolong this, but I think we should try to get it. We should try to deal with it tonight.
Can I speak? It's Counselor
Yes,
Lamb.
Councillor Lamb, you are, you are, as I said before, you're permitted to discuss, to,
Okay, thank you.
to speak to the penalty, yes.
It's pretty hard to take me off boards that I've resigned from. I just resigned from. So why are you taking me off something I'm not even on anymore? I've resigned. So that's overkill, right? The only one that I asked to stay on was the library board, which is different in that it's a different type of board. If the library board wanted me off, they could. But anyway, I guess if you want to take me off the library, that's fine. You know, and I understand what everyone's saying, but to say, oh, you'll only do, here's how you'll get, you know, go to staff. So someone on the road says, I need a road question answered. I need it right away. Oh, I can't talk to the road superintendent. He's hasn't got a problem with me, but I can't talk to him, right? Or anything else. You know, I called into the office. I'd have to talk to someone who's going to answer the telephone. Like, it's just complete overkill. If you wanted to stress as you know, that a teaching moment, believe me, it's been a teaching moment. Don't overkill this thing. We didn't overkill the other ones. I know, you know, I'm going to say this, and I know you won't like it, right? A lot of this, in my opinion, is kind of like payback. And I'll just say that. That's what it is. And you just have to be cautious, please, that you know, all things that go around come around. And it to me, anyway, I'll leave it at that. But this is payback. This is far greater than just this incident. And I think the community knows that. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I say something? Councillor Woods?
Yeah, go ahead.
I can't disagree with Councillor Lamb. I think we are being heavy-handed. I know I've said it before, but you know, and I didn't get the opportunity to talk to Councillor McEwen. I tried. We didn't get to link up. I did talk to Councillor Gore Matthews, and I talked to you, Mr. Mayor. And what both of you have told me is, you know, basically the way that this motion is written, it's not only about Councillor Lamb's conduct in these two meetings that are in question. You both told me that this goes back to the way that he has apparently bullied people in the past. Now, I don't know, because I haven't been on council a long time, but I haven't seen that in him personally, right? But it seems to me that the three members of council, you're letting more of your personal opinion about Councillor Lamb's personality cloud your decision on this, right? Like you told me, Mr. Mayor, you know, during the pool, it was uncomfortable for council members, and Councillor Lamb was the driver in that. We can't be thinking like that. We look at the evidence that's in front of us and we judge them based on that. Now, the code of conduct that I read today, section 12.1, for the sanctions, it says we can request an apology and or a reprimand and or suspension or remuneration to the councillor for their services as a member of council or local board for a period of up to 90 days. And we're going over and above that. It doesn't make sense to me. To me, the way this whole thing has been handled from the onset, it's been handled wrong. We can all do better. There should have been a discussion happening beforehand with Councillor Lamb, and I think you, Mr. Mayor, because you're a very even-tempered man, a discussion between the two of you with the CAO, and then get the other parties involved so that people can talk about this, rather than elevating it to this. To me, this is a railroad job. This is nothing more than a smear campaign to slander a four-term councillor that has worked his butt off and made a positive impact in this community. Now, if people were offended or their feelings were hurt, that I'm not disputing the fact that, you know, the people involved, their feelings were hurt or they were offended. But nothing that Councillor Lamb said in that meeting was a derogatory comment directed specifically towards them. It just wasn't. And I'm telling you, if there was, I would tell the truth. I have nothing to gain. This is completely unprofessional the way all of this is handled.
Okay, well, thank you.
To me, it's over the top, Mr. Mayor, completely over the top. And
Right.
any taxpayer that would like to call me and ask me after a meeting What happened in that meeting, my version, please call me. And I will tell you what I saw, what I witnessed.
Well,
Mr. Mayor.
who is speaking?
Oh, Councillor Gore Matthews.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Gore Matthews. Go ahead. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I couldn't see your square light up here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just want to remind everyone that, the Integrity Commissioner has investigated this. Our staff has made the report. I think it's sad to belittle information that staff has had the courage to bring forward. I don't think that's the kind of community and municipality that we want to be encouraging to have. I understand people are frustrated, but I don't see how this is payback for something, because it's staff that made a complaint. It's not that someone from council made a complaint against Councillor Lamb. I don't understand that. And, Councillor Lamb, I'm kind of sad to hear you say, talking about payback and what comes around goes around. We've got a problem. We've got a problem with the culture in this municipality, and it's frustrating. I don't know who's going to want to run in the next election that would want to be part of this culture that we seem to be trapped in. There's nothing personal about this, Councillor Lamb. It's purely in my direction of this is to protect staff. We have an obligation. And in your letter that you submitted, your last sentence was to not put your good name in jeopardy. Well, we're trying to do that for you, in creating a context where you can communicate with staff in a protected way, either through writing or whatnot. It protects you because you've got it in writing what you've communicated with staff, as opposed to being in a meeting where things could get misconstrued. So I think we're getting off track. What we're looking at right now is just trying to create an atmosphere that everyone can work together successfully in our office, and our staff is being recognized that they had a legitimate complaint as recognized by the Integrity Commissioner. I think we're getting way off track here.
All right. Well, thank you. I think we have to be conscious of the fact that we have a fairly large agenda and there's other things. So I want to kind of see if we can draw this to a conclusion. Councillor Lamb has suggested that since he resigned, we could perhaps put number 2 to say that we accept the resignation. Normally resignations are in writing. But I guess if we said we could, I'm not sure what difference it makes, but we could reword it so that we accept the resignation of Councillor Lamb from the boards and committees. I believe that the library board should stay on the list. I think that's I don't see that there's an argument for removing it. That certainly limits possibilities of this happening. And anyway, and he has been appointed to that board for a long time. In number 3, if someone wishes to suggest an alternative wording, I guess it would be that he be directed that all of his communication is to go through the mayor and or the CAO, and that one-on-one telephone conversations be with no one-on-one telephone conversations. So in other words, if he wants to speak to another staff member for a particular thing, that it goes through the CAO, so she has the opportunity of listening to what's being said and what's being asked and and so on. So I don't know, does someone want to let's deal with those two things separately. I'll ask the mover and seconder, are you okay if item II reads council accepts Councillor Lamb's resignation from the following boards and committees. Is that, are you okay with that?
Mr. Mayor, I was a seconder, if I could.
You're the seconder, yes.
I see no problem with it the way it is. If it wants to be changed to him resigning, that's fine. For the balance of the council term, that should stay. That's my only comment on that one. I don't see any reason to change it personally, but if it's council's will. And then on the 3 III, I was the one who suggested CAO and mayor. If that's suitable to council, that would be a change on that one for me. Thank you.
All right. The mover is, well, all right. The mover was Councillor Woods.
Mr. Mayor, I mean, one, I'm okay with, point one. The second one, I don't know how we take him off committees when he's already resigned. I mean, the library board, I guess from what I'm hearing is maybe the rest of you have talked to the library board and they don't want him on that board. The rest of them, he willingly said that he wouldn't take part in. He would resign from them. I don't know why we have to put that in. As far as him only communicating with you or the CAO, if that's what you and the CAO would like, but I seriously, I'm not good with handcuffing him and not allowing him to have a basic conversation with a municipal staff member. I could see if you didn't want him to have dealings with the 2 staff members that are included in the report. But to my knowledge, no one else has filed any complaints against Councillor Lamb, any integrity commissioner complaints against him. I don't know why we're taking it that far. I'm obviously thinking about this different than the rest of you. But I don't know. It's very heavy-handed. I guess we'll vote the way we want to vote. But to me, I don't agree with it. I really don't. I think we're doing a great disservice to this community by doing this. We really are.
All right. Well, yeah, I don't know. And I'm not going to ask, I'm not going to put her on the spot and ask her. I don't know what the CAO's view of being the focal point of
Mr. Mayor,
this,
you have the 3 things.
But
it was moved and seconded. Why don't we just vote on it? And whatever happens, happens. Because obviously my vote's not going to change. And I'm sure that you and the other 2 councillors, your mind's already made up. I mean, that's evident when you look at the next point in this motion.
Well,
right. Am I reading that wrong?
Mr. Mayor, can I make a comment?
Go ahead, Councillor McGill.
Yeah, I sense that this is someone's trying to minimize the seriousness of this situation. So I'd say we might as well just go ahead and vote on it. My mind is
that's fine.
Is to vote on it. Thank you.
All right. Well, I believe I'm being asked. Sorry. I believe I'm being asked to call the vote. So in that particular case, we'll I guess what I will do is the motion stands as it as it was originally read. I guess I will ask the CAO clerk to call the roll for the vote then.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councillor Lamb.
Councillor Lamb. I mean, for the love of whatever, like to tell me that I cannot contact any municipal employee, the way that the third thing is not right. Like to not at least change that. I can't vote on this, but I mean, to seriously say that I can't call, and if the receptionist answers, say, whoa, I'm in violation. I'm forbidden to even call the office. Is that really what you people want to do? Really think about it. Thank you.
No, Councillor Lamb, I've already said that isn't what the intent of it is. I mean, there might be a better wording here for this. I am not.
That's what you're voting on.
Well, that's why I was trying to see if we could get an amendment to it, to be honest with you, just to not to water it down, but just to make very clear what the I don't know if there's
Mr. Mayor, could I pull my name as the mover?
well, you moved it for discussion.
Yeah, so
Your
am
vote
I
that
allowed
it's your
to do
vote
that?
that it's your
My
it's your
vote that counts? Okay, that's fine, no problem.
it's just your
Okay.
vote that counts, but
Okay, okay.
I wish that someone I mean, I'm always a little nervous about sort of trying to rewrite something on the fly, but as I said, I think I said before, the intention was to avoid situations where frankly, where any counselor is simply, calling up a staff person and demanding that they do something, or those kinds of requests have to come from they have to come from the council as a whole. And requests for information are one thing, but sometimes they can be very, very time consuming, and I feel that our CAO should know what people are asking for, and there's nothing wrong with encouraging that the requests be by email. If it's just a routine request. If it's a need to discuss something, then we're not trying to prevent that. We're not trying to prevent Councillor Lamb from doing his job. That's not, I don't think that's anyone's intention. It's just it's just to make very clear what the expectation is. So I don't know. I would really like to get this addressed tonight so that we don't come back to another meeting and try to deal with it again. So
Mr. Mayor, can I make just a comment on this?
Mhm.
I don't feel there's that many issues at stake here to be concerned about, even for number 3. If it's an emergency, then it'll be an emergency and it'll be handled. The number of times someone has to go to a township employee, or the number of times a person catches you along the road and says, hey, I want my culvert fixed. Well, that's not something I would deal with personally. I just send them to the municipal office and go through the proper hierarchy. So I don't see a problem with that, actually, of just leaving it the way it is. I don't think we're looking at a lot of situations.
Okay, I'm wondering if the mover and seconder would accept this. If instead of the wording that is there, if we said Councillor Lamb is directed to communicate with Whitestone municipal staff and contract employees through the CAO clerk and or the mayor. How about that? Would that just so that one of those persons is aware of what the communication is? And
That's fine by me. It's saying the same thing in my mind.
I wonder if that would get around our problem. So we're not saying that you can't communicate with them, but there needs to be the CAO clerk in particular and or myself, if she's not available, need to know that this is going on so that we're,
Just a quick, real quick question, little analogy, Mr. Mayor. How is Councillor Lamb supposed to pay for his dump load at Alds Road Dump without having to talk to a municipal employee? Is he gonna have to call you or the CAO first to ask if he's okay to ask how much he has to pay? Because the way this is written, it handcuffs him from having any contact with anyone other than you or the CAO. And I mean, for day-to-day things that he might have a question on, or just going into the office to get paperwork, like he wouldn't be allowed?
well, no, he can get his paperwork without, without. Can you suggest the wording that you like better?
I don't know. To me, it's mind-boggling to me that we're even putting that in. I can see.
Well,
I don't know. I
Mr.
mean,
Mayor,
Councillor Gorham Matthews.
from now on. So I can't finish. Okay.
Well, sorry, I thought you were finished. But please,
Mr. Mayor, for one thing, I mean, any committee meetings from this point forward, I think all of them should be recorded, like the meeting that I had following the October 6th meeting. I think that would keep everybody in check. That would be a fantastic plan for us moving forward. I think this is heavy-handed. I would ask that you remove me from making the motion. Maybe Councillor Gorham Matthews would like to switch and she could make the motion, and we just get to it and we vote on it, because it doesn't seem like we're getting anywhere. We're just taking up time, and the decision's already been made. Right? That we're
All
just
right, look,
basically going to vote for. Right? Well, am I wrong?
I will. All right. I want to let
Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Gorham Matthews speak, and then I will take one last time.
Sure.
And if this doesn't work, if I can't come up with something, then we'll vote on it as it is. Sorry, Councillor Gorham Matthews, please.
Sure, I just wanted to mention that when you're talking about being at the landfill, that's a personal business. We're not talking about a municipal business. So I think we're just talking about municipal run items that would be brought up. You can do anything personally. You can pay your taxes. You can go to landfill. Those are completely different type items to be considered. And I'm more than happy to be the mover if Councillor Woods wants to take his name off.
All right. Let me just try one more thing.
I'm really glad. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say I was really glad that Councillor Gorham Matthews said
All
what
right.
she said. Right there.
I hear you. Okay.
I
How about, let me try one
it's not the
more.
way it's written, though.
Can I understand?
Yep, sorry.
Can I try something completely different? How about this? Number 3, instead of what it says, how about we say this? Council directs staff to develop and implement, sorry, I'm writing while I talk here, but develop and implement a protocol to ensure that that staff and including contract employees are protected against maybe just protected in any one-on-one conversations. I guess I'm thinking that there is a possibility that we could come up with a protocol, if you like, that would, for example, I think recording meetings and other interactions, which is clearly legal, is an approach, and it gives you evidence. You don't get into this he said, she said, or whatever kind of discussion where, it's very clear what was said. And I think that's useful. Many other committees that I'm on, I can tell you are they're recorded as a matter of course. And it's done to help people. So you can go back and say, oh, what was that point somebody made, and then you forget it, you didn't capture it properly, you go back and listen to what it was. So it's just like we do for these meetings that we're in right now. So I don't know, I'm going to ask the mover and seconder again, would you be satisfied with something that allows, gives us the opportunity of going away and coming up with a protocol? And the focus of it would be to satisfy staff that they're protected from, and truthfully, it's from anybody who would choose to do this, and who would choose to engage in an unacceptable communication with them.
Mr. Mayor, as seconder,
Yes?
I feel it's council's responsibility to make this decision, not to put it back on staff. And it's a specific situation here. And if we want to come up with a policy or some ruling on this for all committees and across the board, that's for another day. I think it's we're minimizing the situation again here. The seriousness of it. We should make a decision and get on with it. Thank you.
All right. Councillor Gore Matthews, do you have a comment?
I think it is a good idea to develop a policy that will protect everyone. Like whenever we're in a situation of a meeting and such with volunteers and staff, maybe we do need to have more than just recorded notes. With the Zoom, we have the opportunity to record it, and it'll prevent anybody from getting in the situation that Councillor Lamb is in, where there's different versions of what's happened. So I support that.
But my question is, are you prepared to replace item III in this resolution with that or not? Sounds like our seconder is not in favor of doing that.
Well, my problem with it is that, like Councillor Woods mentioned, I don't want to handicap Councillor Lamb's ability to do his job. He's still representing the public, but I also don't want to get into this situation again, or to feel that our staff is exposed to something like this happening again. So, and I don't think there's a quick solution to come up with tonight to prevent that.
Well, the other thing I guess that we could do to limit the scope of it somewhat is that we could add to the motion, the way it was written originally, something about in carrying out his duties as councillor, which would therefore preclude that would exclude any interactions at the landfill site, or if he decides to go skating with somebody at the pavilion, who's working at the pavilion or whatever it is, that's not make it clear that this is about, and this is really, as I said before, about asking staff or telling staff to do various things or other similar kinds of comments. So, we could qualify it that way if you want for now. And
Mr. Mayor, you could leave it as it is and put after, including contract employees, except for personal business in the municipality.
Except for personal business, would you, Councillor Gore Matthews, would you accept that?
Yes, that's fine, because the Councillor Lamb has the right to call the bylaw officer if he has a complaint.
Exactly.
We can't limit all contact. It's just in the context of doing his duties, we just want to be able to protect his
well, that's why
reputation and our staff.
Thank you. That's why I suggested that we add the words in carrying out his duties as a counselor, because then other things of that nature, if he has a complaint that needs to address, or a tree's falling across his road or something of that sort, then it's very clear that that's not his business as a counselor. That's his business as a ratepayer. And so either one of those is okay with me. What do you want, except for personal business, or in care, or do you want to say in carrying out his duties as a counselor?
Except for personal business.
All right. Okay. So that's Councillor McEwen. Are you okay with that?
Yes, I am.
Second. All right. You know what? I'm going to call the question the way it is, and I do appreciate the discussion, and I think we'll get to a workable solution. So the motion, I guess I'm going to have to read the parts that have changed. Part number III says effective immediately and for the balance of the current council term, Councillor Lamb is is forbidden to communicate in person or by telephone with members of Whitestone municipal staff except for personal business. And the rest of the motion stays the way it is right now. And so with that, I think we've been at this quite a while. I will ask the CAO clerk to call the question.
Councillor Gore Matthews,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb.
Councillor Lamb's abstaining, I think.
Okay, he needs to,
I'm not voting.
thank you. You need to say that. Councillor McEwen,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
No.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is carried.
All right. We can now move on to item 7.2, which is a second delegation, and it's
Mayor?
it's from, yes.
There's another motion about that
Oh.
Councillor Whitworth.
I
Better go on to that one.
apologize.
Thank you.
Councillor Lamb, you are absolutely right. Item number 3, which is a follow-on to us removing or to Councillor Lamb resigning, and we're being removed, however you wish to see it, as from these appointments that he has. We would need, I think, to reappoint councillors to at least 3 of those. And I realize that the committee of adjustment meets rarely, but there is a need for it to be able to meet when someone makes an application. The thrift shop committee, I believe, is not probably meeting much either because the thrift shop is closed, but it will probably reopen later this year. And of course, the library and technology center is clearly a going concern. And so there is a suggestion here, item 3. I'll read it to you, that Council of Municipality of Whitestone hereby appoints the following members of council to replace Councillor Lamb on its boards and committees. Library and Technology Center, Councillor Gore Matthews, the Committee of Adjustment, Councillor McEwen, and the Whitestone Thrift Shop Committee, Mayor Comrie. So is there a mover and seconder for that motion?
I'll move that.
Okay, Councillor Gore Matthews. Is there a seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor McEwen. Discussion about that one.
But I have something I'd like to say, Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Please go ahead.
After I spoke to you this afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Lamb had called me and said, did you see the proposed motion? And I said, no. So I opened up my email and I read this, and the decision is already made. And this is the point that I was trying to make earlier, and I was trying to make to you on the phone, Mr. Mayor. The three of you have already decided not only his fate, but who was taking his seat. And I'm, once again, not included in any of it. I don't understand how three council members can have a discussion about municipal business outside of a council meeting and not, no discussion with the other councillor whatsoever, being me.
Well,
You've already picked who's going on where.
Yeah.
I just explain that to me, please.
all right, Councillor Woods.
I don't get that, Mr. Mayor.
Well, let me explain it to you, there's no intention to exclude you. The problem simply was there was no opportunity to have this happened very, very late in the day. The council itself did not see the report of the Integrity Commission or anything else. So it became apparent that if there was going to be, if council, we didn't see it, we didn't see it before you did, before.
No, I'm not suggesting that you did, Mr. Mayor. I'm not suggesting that.
So the whole the issue is simply, we have these boards and committees, they have to be replaced. Now, the normal procedure, as you know, for this is that we ask councilors if they want to do these things. Those names are just placeholders. If someone is not happy with where their name is, this is an opportunity for them to say. If someone else would like to do one of those things, this is an opportunity for them to say. Do I want to sit on another committee? No, I've got a lot of committees. I've got a lot of other things to do. Those are just, if you want, if someone doesn't like what they're being suggested they do, there are four of us who can do these things. Let's populate the tables.
Mr. Mayor, it's Councillor Lamb. Can I please speak on this? Right? Because I'm off the committees.
I guess you can, sure. Why not?
Well, I sure can.
Yeah.
I'm on council. So,
yeah.
So what Councillor Woods is getting at, and fundamentally you have to think through this. What you just said is normally what happens is that, it says who wants to run, right? But that isn't what happened here. Motions were sent out this afternoon with conclusions. Now, those conclusions had to have occurred because you asked, you just didn't put Councillor Gorham Matthews in the slot without saying, do you want to be on that committee? You didn't put Mr. Joe McEwen, Councillor McEwen on by saying, oh, I'll just stick his name in there. You three had conversations and decided. Now, yes, it can change, but you cannot have council meetings behind the scenes and you say, well, it wasn't a council meeting. I talked to her individually and him individually and whatever. You did this wrong. And you know what? You got to admit that this was done wrong. And, fundamentally, you can't carry on the business of the municipality, including appointments to committee, in the background. And that's what you're doing here. Thank you.
So I apologize. I would have sent, it should have been sent out with blanks in it. There's not, I think you're missing I hear what you're saying, but I'm sorry, the optics of it isn't good, but nevertheless, you're missing the point here. When I discussed this matter with our CAO, and I said, we got to have, if we're going to do this, we got to find, we've got to find some people to to fill the vacancies, and that was.
But why was it Councillor Woods called?
Well, in fact, I didn't get to him until this afternoon. That's the.
They were filled in beforehand.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, but can we go back and discuss? I mean, normally speaking, I would try to at least find out in advance if somebody is prepared and willing to do something. So that's all. So it's only in the interest of expediency, but I'm asking the councilors right now, the three, excluding myself, the three councilors who are eligible for these appointments, what would you like to do? Tell me if
Mr.
you
Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, in all fairness, the names are already filled in. It's already been moved and seconded, so why don't we just vote?
what would you like to
Right.
do, Brian? Councillor
No,
Woods.
it doesn't matter. George, sorry, Mr. Mayor, at this point, it's neither here nor there. That's fine. If the balance of council doesn't think that I have, any want, desire, or maybe ability, I don't know, to sit on any of these committees, that's fine. No problem. If the names are filled in, I'm okay with it. I just, in all honesty, Mr. Mayor, from day one, I've been left out of this council, and we definitely have a dysfunctional council, and I don't know what I've done to make any of you feel like I didn't want to be part of the team. I really don't. My best interest is the best interest of the taxpayers of this community, and that's it. That's fine. You don't want me on the boards? No problem. We got the names filled in. You guys are all qualified. That's fine. We'll just leave it like that, and let's vote on it.
All right. Thank
Well,
you.
it is the case, Mr. Mayor. Sorry.
All right. So fine. Once again, I'll ask the CAO clerk to call the question then.
Councillor Gore Matthews,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
I'll abstain from voting.
Councillor McEwen,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
I abstain.
Mayor Comrie,
Yes.
thank you. That motion is carried.
All right. Thank you very much. Now, can we move on to item 7.2? Our presenter is Scott Nash, who I believe is still.
Yes, I am here, Mr.
Are you
Mayor.
still here?
Yeah.
Scott, thank
Yeah.
you. Scott had on an earlier, some of you will recall, had entered into correspondence a petition. But he had asked for an opportunity to make a presentation. And so I guess we'll hear that now, and then we'll take a motion to receive it. The only other comment I would make about this particular one is that there is an item in correspondence, and I'll ask the CAO clerk to tell me which item it is, because I don't have it up on either of my screens here, but there is an item that relates closely to this that was received from the Gooseneck Lake Property Owners Association, I believe they're called. Gooseneck Property Owners Association. Anyway, they're that is in the context of this, or in relation to this particular petition and request. So I would simply ask those of you who are listening, watching, to we'll take that into consideration now, rather than bringing it up later after the fact in correspondence, since it deals with the same subject. So Scott, welcome. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much. And I guess just to get started, I think you'd mentioned something about in correspondence. And I think it's page 216 of 247. And just one thing that I mentioned before we do our presentation in regards to the letter that you received from Mr. Jim Alexander. And I noticed that it says GLOPA at the end. But I'd have to suggest that this is a personal letter and not a letter from the association, because if it was a letter from the association, obviously they would have sent a letter out to their members, which myself and several other family members are, and nobody had any correspondence except Mr. Alexander writing a letter. I'd also point out to that correspondence that it says, "Hi, George, I sent you a couple of other previous emails with some questions about this, but I thought I would send you something with a bit more detail." And I guess why wouldn't the other items have been included in correspondence? Instead, staff chose to only include one of the letters. Anyways, I don't want to dwell on that because I don't think it has anything to do with our presentation tonight. But I think put some context into what some people are trying to do with the association. So good evening, council members, staff, and members of the public. We would like to take this time to thank the municipality for allowing us to make the presentation tonight in regards to a request for a dock for day use at the Gooseneck Lake public launch area for use by the general public, local residents, and ratepayers. On the call today is Larry Watkinson, Danny Holmes, both of whom are longtime year-round residents of the Ardbeg community, and myself, Scott Nash, a property owner on Gooseneck Lake. I will start the presentation followed by comments from Danny and Larry. My portion of the presentation is about 10 minutes in length. As many of you are aware, there is currently no dock at the Gooseneck Lake public landing. In the past, there had been a dock at the landing, but the dock was removed by the MNRF years ago due to lack of funds for repairs. No dock at the Gooseneck Lake public landing creates a number of issues. Examples as follows. Number one, safety concerns due to rocks and slippery ground conditions when trying to load or unload a watercraft. Number two, fire, rescue, and OPP. Responses in the event of an accident or incident on the lake, water access properties, or on the vast crown land on the lake. Number three, launching or removing of watercraft from the lake when there is no dock to assist with the loading or unloading people and their belongings. Number four, damage to boats and watercraft when tied to rocks and trees at the shoreline. Local residents and members of the public, including children from the Ardbeg area, use the boat launch area to swim, boat, fish, and enjoy the public lake, being Gooseneck Lake. For them, there is no other area to easily access the water for swimming, except in the area that boats are launched, and whenever a boat is put into the lake or removed, people must move out of the way. The municipality already has docks at a number of lakes within the community and have in the past advised in past council meetings that their insurance covers liability issues for access points, docks, such as the launch area, docks, and beach by the Dunchurch Community Center, to name one as an example. In speaking with many local residents in the community, there is an overwhelming interest in having a dock installed that would be for day use. Again, I will say for day use for the entire community and general public, to allow for better access to Gooseneck Lake that is a public lake and is not a private lake, as some may try to suggest. Throughout the summer of 2021, 150 names were collected in support of the installation of a public dock for day use by the general public at the Gooseneck Lake public launch area. Attached in the agenda tonight are the 150 signatures that have been collected. All signatures were collected from people that were in the Ardbeg area. We are requesting that the municipality support the installation of a simple floating dock, approximately 10 feet by 20 feet in size, complete with a ladder. There is a rock along the edge of the launch access road by a 90-degree corner that makes it extremely difficult for people to back trailers into the launching area without being extremely close to having their front end of the vehicle precariously close to a 5-foot drop at the water's edge. As such, we would request to have a small portion of the rock removed, as many trailers have been damaged and tires flattened from the jagged rock. In turn, this would then allow for several more feet of space, making it easier to allow vehicles to back into the launching area. We would kindly also request the municipality support the installation of the dock and rock removal, and would ask the municipality to contribute $5,000 towards the work and pass a resolution this evening. The goal would be to install the dock in the spring, summer of 2022. Once the dock has been installed, this would be a public dock for all residents and general public for day use, along with visitors to the Ardbeg area. We understand that several years ago, funds were provided by the municipality for dock improvements at the Indian Narrows public launch on Lake Wawashkesh. Last year, funds were also provided by the municipality and for improvements to the Bolger Lake launch area. And the municipality also supplied and installed several wood docks on Whitestone Lake by the community center in 2021, along with the new boat launch and concrete dock the prior year. In the past, we understand that a resolution was passed by council to support and allow a dock to be reinstalled at Gooseneck Lake with funds raised in the community. This was noted by the late Mayor Chris Armstrong in a council meeting of record back in July of 2016. As the late mayor was a local resident of the Ardbeg community, we would like the dock to be dedicated to the memory of the late mayor, Armstrong, and would propose that a plaque be included on the dock indicating this. Several years ago, the Lake Association, that consists of approximately 30 to 35 members, or about 45% of the properties on Gooseneck Lake, completed a survey and report, which was based on about 27 respondents to the survey, or 35% of the properties. Here are several examples of the comments received related to the public launch area from that survey. Number one, it is a public lake, not a personal fiefdom for some. Now, on a personal note, I had to look up the definition of fiefdom, which is as follows: fiefdom, an area or type of activity that is controlled by somebody. Number two, a dock at the public boat launch would benefit local residents and others visiting the lake. The lake is for everyone's enjoyment. Number three, boat launch facility would be better if boats could be launched straight instead of turning to launch in present location. Number four, public access. Would love to see a dock at the landing. And finally, number five, accessibility to crown land for camping and fishing in the lake. We just want to take a minute now for a simple reminder to council, local residents, visitors to Gooseneck Lake, and owners of property on Gooseneck Lake, that Gooseneck Lake is a public lake and not a private lake, and that the lake is there for the enjoyment of all people, which is something often forgotten in today's world with nimbitism, not in my backyard comments. We will now take time to note the following items from the official plan in regards to access. Firstly, under section 5, objects of the plan. Item 5.11 notes the following: maintaining, expanding, and supporting recreational facilities, programs, and open spaces throughout the municipality. Secondly, under section 10, general parks and open space. Item 10.1 notes the following: council will encourage the preservation and expansion of the existing parks and lake access points. Also, still under 10.01 notes, council will attempt to preserve or expand upon public access. For reference, 10.01, the word preserve or presentation would mean not to remove access and create better access. Thirdly, section 17.02, Gooseneck Lake. Item 1702.2 notes the following: much of the lake is water access. There is a historical public access on the lake that the municipality supports maintaining using proceeds of any cash in lieu of parkland collected as a condition of development or the sale of shore road allowances. For reference, since the creation of the municipality back in the early 2000s, there has been a number of payments for both the closing of shore allowances and severances on Gooseneck that have been subject to cash in lieu of parkland payments that would result in funds being available for the current request. It is great to see the municipality throughout the year has items on the agenda, even in the winter months. And tonight is a good example with the official plan amendments too being discussed, which is a very important topic. The fact that the municipality via video call and conference can make meetings available to all members of the public, no matter where they are in the world, at the time of a meeting due to technology is a benefit. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my portion of the presentation this evening, and we trust that the municipality will support the request and pass a resolution and motion this evening for a dock at Gooseneck Lake for day use for all members of the public. Danny or Larry, please feel free to provide any additional comments. Please remember to unmute yourselves by typing *6 if you're on the phone.
Okay, thank you. Who's going next?
Yes, good evening. This is Danny Holmes, Mayor Crombie. Council, we start off by saying I am a business owner in Whitestone. I'm a first responder with the Whitestone Fire. And I'd like to start off just a couple of comments here with Jim Alexander's letter. Number one, the dock was not removed as he says. It was removed because M&R no longer supports docks. M&R asked Gooseneck Cottage Association if they would, excuse me, maintain the dock. They said no, so M&R removed it. Saying that if M&R was still supporting docks, we'd still have our dock. Now, another thing, as Jim states, our emergency response people don't need a dock. I disagree for reasons. One, it is easier to bring a patient into a dock rather than beach it on the rocks. Two, it gives us firefighters, a place to put our big suction pump on in case of a big fire and fill our pumper trucks. Now, on a personal note, I have worked on Gooseneck Lake. The client hired me to do his property. I had 11 boatloads of garbage to go to the dump, and I had to put my boat on the rocks to transport it out. It would have been a lot easier with a dock. Where am I here? Sorry. And as far as the dock access itself, who cleans it up? The people on 520. We clean up the dog debris, the people's garbage, cut the grass, everything. And the last thing I want to say is it's not a busy lake. My wife and I are on the lake most days. We see at max maybe 8 bows at any given time. People are not looking to go to Gooseneck because it has a dock. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you, Danny. Larry, were you going to, did you have any comments?
Hi, man. Yeah, I would like to make a comment as well. As a longtime resident and property owner that doesn't live on water, I feel that the dock would be a great benefit to the local kids. I have 3 myself, where they can go and enjoy the water, and they can get there on their bicycles rather than me having to drive them, say, to Dunchurch, which is a 20-minute drive, and they can't get there. So I really think that the council should really understand that it is a public lake for the whole municipality, not just the people that live on water and choose to pay water tax by choice. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I guess so. If that's the presentation, I guess the next step would be to get a motion to receive it, and then we can we can see if council wishes to give any direction on the matter. The motion I have is that the council of the municipality of Whitestone hereby receives the request and petition for a dock at Gooseneck Lake Boat Launch for information, and would like to thank the presenters, Scott Nash, Danny Holmes, and Larry Watkinson. And then if I'll get a mover and seconder for that, and then we'll see if we have a motion to act here.
I'll make the motion, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Is there a seconder?
I'll second Councillor Woods.
Councillor Wood seconds. Thank you. I'll start with just a couple of comments, and I mean, you're correct. The presenters are correct about the history of this. There was a dock there. The MNR said we're not going to maintain it anymore, and they removed it. And my recollection of it is that it was kind of in a state of disrepair, and I think there were concerns perhaps about safety around docks and so on. I recall a conversation back at that time, or maybe it was afterwards, and it's perhaps something that was referred to in the presentation that where Chris Armstrong had a conversation with folks there. But I remember asking somebody if they were making a request, somebody who brought to our attention the situation, if they were making a request for a dock. And the response that I got from folks who are in the Cottagers Association was, oh no, we don't need and or want a dock there. And I think in those days, and this is historically the case, the municipality has taken the position that we would certainly consider requests like this to upgrade a dock, but we would expect the local Cottagers Association to take some responsibility for maintaining the dock, because the municipality doesn't typically have resources to do that. And so, I'm kind of wondering if council may want to may want to hear officially, and I realize that the item in correspondence is not an official correspondence. It's simply a response from the president of that association who happened to see the item on our agenda and inquired about it. But probably we would, under normal circumstances, what the next thing we would do probably would be ask that particular association to consider whether they would take on responsibility for maintenance of the dock, and before we would actually take any action. So I don't know. I'll let other councillors speak and see what they think we should do about this. But normally we would do some more checking before we would just put the thing into before we would make a commitment to
Mayor Crombie,
right now to do it, especially since, by the way, everybody realizes, I'm sure, that we're in the process of putting together a budget for our next year, and there are, obviously, as there always are, various items competing for the available funds. So,
Mr. Mayor, Scott Nash, can I say one comment just quickly to what you just asked there? It's really, really quick. It'll take me 30 seconds.
Go ahead.
And all it was the McGee Lake Road Association would be more than happy to take on the maintenance of the dock, and we would be more than happy to have any member of the Ardbeg community join our little road association, which we get grants for, because it's very important, as the official plan would state, for access to all lakes. And I've never heard of a a lake association that represents less than half of a lake get veto power on what's done on the lake. It's a public lake for public use. So if you need somebody to volunteer to maintain it, we're more than happy to do so. And I'm sure many, many members of the Ardbeg community, or maybe it would be the Ardbeg Community Club, would be more than happy to do the maintenance on the dock if maintaining a dock is so time consuming and expensive, yet it can be maintained at the Dunchurch landing and other landings. So again, it's kind of like people in Ardbeg feel left out. But anyways, I didn't want to dwell on it too much. Hopefully other councillors have some comments, and hopefully something can get passed tonight and dealt with in a timely fashion. So sorry for speaking again, but I'll let it go back to you guys. Sorry about that.
Excuse me, Mayor Crombie, could I speak? It's
I
Danny Holmes.
sorry, I really, in the interest of time, I would like to hear what councillors think we should do about this.
But the thing is, Gooseneck Association will never, ever vote for this. And it's the Ardbeg people that maintain it now. And as a businessman, I have a handyman service. I will volunteer to look after the dock myself.
Okay, well, no, this is all useful information. I appreciate what you're saying. I'm not trying to say, I'm not just trying to say no. I'm trying to get what the other councillors think we should do about this. But thank you. Go
Mr.
ahead. Somebody. Well, all right, Councillor Lamb, go ahead.
Good. I'll tell you what I think. I think that not only on Gooseneck, I think on all our public landings, which are on public lakes, that we should be endeavoring to spend and do what we can in terms of access to that lake or those lakes. So I'm fully supportive of this. There's 130 people or signatures. Larry or Denny are correct. Gooseneck is just going to say, no way, no, we don't want it, we don't need it, we don't, whatever. And so we know the answer to that. We've been down this road before. The only concern I have, now there's two aspects to it. First of all, I think that we should be putting into our budget monies to buy a 10 by 20 dock, okay? Because I think the municipality, in my opinion, should own the dock, and therefore it would be covered by some sort of liability insurance as we have on every other dock. So I think it's in my opinion, we should be buying the dock. And if the association, McGee Road or whatever, want to maintain it and that sort of thing, that's fine. The only concern I would have is when you have boating and swimming, I'm not sure, or I'm not convinced in my mind that we should have a ladder at the end of that dock. But every other aspect, I'm fully supportive. We can do it. We can put it in, we can direct staff to put this in the budget at the end or next week that we're looking at. And that's my feeling on it. And it doesn't only exist at Gooseneck, it exists at many other landings, and we should be spending our money in Whitestone to improve access and to let people enjoy our lakes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, other councillors.
Mayor Comrie?
Go ahead. Councillor Gorham Matthews.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Lamb that it was a good learning exercise when COVID first started, when we did the list of all the landings that we had. I think we were all surprised at how many access points the municipality actually has. And I think we should be budgeting something for each of them to improve them every year. You know, we've spent a lot of money on Whitestone, we spent money on Watercraft and all these other little lakes and landings. We ought to be, even if we're fixing up the turnarounds and things like that, something could be done at each of them, not every year, but to do in a rotational style to provide access for everyone. When I looked at their lake plan, the Gooseneck Lake Plan, I pulled it up the other night after I saw this was on the agenda. And you know, the main thing that the lake plan was concerned with was sea-doos and pontoon boats. That's not the type of boat that's going to be put in for day use. We're talking people throwing in a little fishing boat and going out for the day and coming back. We're not um, going to be seeing a lot of traffic, that people that aren't already using the area, we're just making it a little bit more accessible. The only fear that I have is that that area has, well, the whole Ardbeg area has been battling people camping and ATVing, and you know, the whole issue of the 4x4s and such. That having a dock there will make the area a little bit more appealing for someone to want to try to camp there. And it is a no camping area. And I have talked to different residents that have called me on weekends and said, somebody's camping at Gooseneck. And, you know, I've gotten in touch with CAO Henry, and she has let Mr. Rosser know, and he has gone out and checked it a few times. And that has been a frequent problem since COVID. So that would be my only concern, would be that we're making it a even better place to hang out, you know, with the dock, in terms of somebody wanting to try to camp there. You know, I've come across campers on the Clear Lake, right on the beach, on the walking trails and stuff this year as well. So, you know, there's people pitching tents everywhere. The other thing that, when I talk to some of the people that use that landing on a regular basis, is even if we don't have the money for the dock or do a dock this year, at least commit to making it safer. I've talked to a number of people that have said that, you know, it's quite a sharp bend. There's a drop off in one spot where you're trying to back in. So at the very minimum, we should be committing to making it more accessible for people to get their boats in and out safely. The only other thing I would bring up is who would monitor and enforce the day use. You know, I'm not sure how that would work. We do get complaints from Washcash about people leaving their boats for excessive amounts of time, running into town for the day or whatnot, and tying up the dock for the day. So that's something else to consider, of how do you make sure that people don't abuse having the dock. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Anybody else want to weigh in on this one? Councillor McEwen, are you, you're muted if you're trying to speak.
Yeah, I lost my screen for a few minutes. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Lamb and Councillor Gorham Matthews on this. I think it's as noted in the official plan, and we've been giving these locations attention at different locations. And maybe it's time to give this one a big going over. Possibly we'll have to get our facilities manager or someone to give a looking over to see, in fact, just what we are getting into. When you start looking at moving rocks and that kind of thing, I can't personally visualize just where this dock would even go to make sure it's in a suitable location, acceptable to our staff as well. It will become our dock eventually, although someone will hopefully maintain it. So I'm not sure just what the next step is, but as Councillor Lamb mentioned, purchasing a dock for these specific landing locations, I think, is very futuristic and timely to start working on even more. So I support some movement in that direction. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else? Councillor Woods, did you have a comment?
I do, Mr. Mayor, if that would be okay. I'll try and be quick because I know we're pressed for time. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. First and foremost, I would like to thank the presenters for putting this presentation together. You know, Mr. Holmes, Mr. Watkinson, and Mr. Nash, thank you very much. I think that there has definitely been an appetite in the Ardbeg community to get a dock back at that location. I do use that boat launch. That is my go-to and has been for the 10 years that I've been up here. I mean, even now that I'm over on Farley's Road, I still take the time and I go over to Gooseneck. It's the first place that my two young boys learned how to swim. First time they were ever in the lake, it was right there at Gooseneck. I've bumped into so many people over there that I didn't know, and they've all said the same thing. A dock would make things safer, and I can't disagree with them. For me, trying to get my 2 young kids in and out of a tinny that's bouncing off the rocks because there might be a little bit of chop on the lake, it's dangerous. I know we have a lot of people in our community, regardless of their age, they have some mobility issues that use Gooseneck Lake, and trying to get in and out of a boat is pretty hectic when you don't have proper docking facilities. It is real hard to make the turn. I mean, I've grabbed people's boat trailers with a couple other people that were there and helped them get around the corner so that they could launch the boat. So removing some rock would be a good thing. But I think that's a separate issue from the dock. I mean, the dock to me could be installed and we could put money aside. And I definitely think we should be looking at all of our boat launches. I have talked to some council members over this term of council, and the feeling I got was we should be doing some upgrades on the rest of our public landings. And I don't think we should be afraid to. You know, some people are going to like it, some people aren't. But at the end of the day, I think it's a fantastic addition to make our community live up to its motto of a perfect place to live, work, and play. And it does make things safer. This past summer, I had the opportunity to talk to the OPP Marine unit when they were doing a patrol on the lake. They pulled in and the one officer jumps out, and I asked him, I said, do you think it would be easier if you had a dock? And they both laughed and said, absolutely, this would be easier for us to get in and out. I mean, so the OPP thinks it would be a good idea, and it would provide them ease of access to do patrols on the lake. So if there is, you know, some bad behavior, it would make it easier for the OPP to get in and out. I watch people getting in and out of boats, and I always sit there and think, I hope you don't slip on that wet rock, because the rocks there, you know, the water splashes, they do get extremely slippery and dangerous. I've bumped into so many families that have young kids out there, and they're waiting in the area where everybody launches the boats. And when a boat comes in, everybody has to get out, move out of the way. And, you know, it can take some time sometimes for someone to get a boat in, especially when they're trying to launch a boat by themselves. And I mean, you look at the price of a decent sized fiberglass boat, even if it's just someone that has waterfront property on Gooseneck, and they maybe have, you know, a 16 or 18 foot fiberglass boat. Nowadays, some of those boats, you know, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 isn't hard to pay for. And if you were trying to launch the boat at the beginning of the year to get it over to your property and your own dock, tying that expensive boat up to the rocks, and the time it takes you to drive back and park up in the parking area to go put your boat back and then, you know, get someone to drive you back, the boat could get damaged and someone could get injured. So I support this wholeheartedly. I'm really glad that the council members have said that they would support a dock going in there. But I really don't think that we need to take any amount of time to do any investigation. We're talking about a simple dock. I wholeheartedly support putting the dock in there, Mr. Mayor, and I think it is literally in the best interest of anyone that comes to this community or anybody that lives here in this community.
Okay, well, thank you. I guess the next step would be for us to craft some direction on this particular item. I'll be honest with you, I should say it at the outset. I agree with the sentiments of the other councilors in terms of landings. Back when we were talking about landings, so a year, maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I asked our staff if they would sort of compile a list of all the ones we had. And it turns out, if some of you may remember, we did circulate this, I think. We have a whole bunch more than people realize. We have a lot more than I realized, to be truthful. And I guess the sort of responsible way to handle this, frankly, is to do what you know, what Councillor Lamb suggested, I guess at the beginning, which was to ask staff to put into the budget what they feel this would cost. And I think, you know, we have to, and this is not to say that we don't do it because it sets a precedent. We have already set a precedent in the sense that, as has been pointed out, in the sense that we have paid to rebuild and expand docks in Dunchurch at the waterfront and on Washkesh and in various other places, with the exception of Dunchurch, which is all municipal, you know, part of the municipal complex. We I think in every case where we have put money into a dock or a landing, we have an agreement, an actual written legal agreement with somebody to do maintenance and surveillance and that kind of thing, so that simply because we don't have the staff, currently have staff resources, if we were to do this for a number of docks, like if we were to look at other lakes like Shawanaga and Lorimer and so on, and we have requests from them too, as you may be aware, to do things. Eventually we're stretching our existing resources a little thin, so we have to think about that. But that doesn't that gives us an opportunity to put the request in context. And of course, if we were to ultimately, to council were agree to put it in the budget, then the next step, I think, would be that there would be some there would be a request to identify a group who would take some responsibilities for at least alerting us to when there are problems and or things that need to be repaired to keep it safe. And finally, in that connection, I'm familiar with the landing. I've never tried to launch a boat there, but I've been in a number of times. I have launched boats on Gooseneck, but I come from the Low Washkesh end over Olds Road and the dam. So, but it strikes me that it is not a terribly safe landing. The landing itself is not terribly safe. And so there might actually be a little bit more that needs to be done if the goal is to make it into a proper landing where people can do both. I hear people talking about swimming, and I hear people talking about launching boats and so on. And normally speaking, those activities don't coexist in a very small space. So you know, and Councillor Gorham Matthews mentioned that. So I think we would probably have to have our staff look at what else might be necessary, so that we don't, we don't just provide a dock and then next year we have another delegation coming back and saying, well, sorry, it's still not very usable and we need to do something else. We might as well find out what the whole thing is. So those are my comments. If someone would like to make a motion that we ask staff to include this in the budget, we can certainly entertain that.
I'll make the motion, Councillor Lamb.
All
And
right.
I would, the motion would be that staff put in the budget a 10 by 20, I take it floating dock in this year's budget, and do the correct analysis to come up with the right way to put it in, right? So thank you.
All right, I'm trying to capture that, but draft budget, the cost of a approximately 10-foot by 20-foot floating dock. Yes, it would be a floating dock, I think, attached to something on the shore, of course, but floating dock.
I understand there's pins and stuff there, someone told me.
There used to be. I don't know, I haven't been there for a while, but
Yeah, there was one there this summer. Mr. Mayor, would it be necessary to get the MNR approval again to revisit that situation? If that same situation is where the dock would go, I don't know. Maybe there's some correspondence, communication with, say, Danny and Scott from our staff to
Well, I think that's something that we
You know.
would, probably do. There used to be a dock there, so they're not,
Yeah,
but they, in theory, if it requires in-water work or shore work, then it requires a permit. If it's just to put a dock where a dock used to be, a floating dock, I guess it's, but I think we would have to leave that to our staff to see whether they believe it's necessary to ask approval for it. So,
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor, it's just Scott, just to answer Councillor McEwen's comment there. I'm sure Danny or myself would be more than happy to talk to staff members. And I think you'd said there was one, you'd seen one of the old eyes from the old dock. There is two there, so there wouldn't be any in-water work. And actually, I believe Michelle's on the phone. Michelle and I exchanged a few emails. I'm going to say a month, maybe it was 2 months ago when I first sent something in. And she had suggested that I think if I'm quoting you right, Michelle, that the public works manager or supervisor can go out in the spring to have a look at the rocks. And I said, we'd be more than happy to meet with them and go over that. So I think you have some interested local residents that are more than happy to help out as we need or as staff feels our help could be used. So thank you. And thank you to all the councillors for their comments tonight.
all right, thanks. I'm going to call the question on this, and I will just want to make sure that you understand what you're voting on. Part number one of the
Sorry,
motion. Oh, I'm
sorry,
sorry,
Mr.
Councillor
Mayor,
Woods.
we need a, I was just going to say we need a seconder, and I'll second Councillor Lamb's motion.
You are the seconder. I'm just tacking it on to the
Oh,
motion
okay.
that we were discussing already. That's why
Okay.
I'm going to read it.
Okay, sorry. Sorry for
It's
interrupting.
okay. The first part was to thank our to receive the request and petition and thank our presenters. Okay, I read that to you. And then the second part was that Council of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby provides the following direction: that staff put in the draft 2022 budget the cost of approximately 10-foot by 20-foot floating dock and other necessary improvements at the Gooseneck Lake boat launch. So if the mover and seconder are okay with that as a whole motion, we can call a question, I think. Madam CIO, do you want to call the
Yes.
roll, please? Call the roll.
I will, thank you. Councillor Gore Matthews,
Yes.
thank you. Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor McEwen,
yes,
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie,
Yes.
motion is carried.
All right, thank you. Now,
Mr. Mayor?
yes,
Mr.
go
Mayor?
ahead.
I just want to set the scene here. There's a lot of people, I'm sure, that are on this call, waiting to get to OP2 and the back lots and all this kind of stuff. But just to be clear, you had a closed meeting at 5 o'clock. We started the council meeting at 6:30, and 10 minutes or 15 minutes. We're coming up on 3 hours since 6:30, plus the close. When's our curfew? Because we only have so long that we can do this. So is the curfew 9:30?
I would argue that the curfew is 9:30, but if you include the time before dinner, although sometimes in the past we have not done so. Look, let me ask our clerk what her opinion is on the matter.
I'm not trying to be.
Well,
I'm not trying to be. I'm just trying to set the scene because we have to be able to prioritize. We've got accounts payable. We've got a number of stuff because so much time was spent on the first item. Like you're going to run out of time here. So you are absolutely correct, and the things like accounts payable and the staff reports could be added to our
budget meeting agenda for the 22nd. There, and one of those staff reports, of course, well, a couple of those staff reports are really specific to budget. What I was about to say was, I think we're going to try and get a kick at these planning items, hopefully, and that's as far as we're going to go. We're going to run it. We were clearly going to run out of time, as you say. So,
But what is the time? How long, how much time do we have? That's my question.
well, we could go till 10 o'clock if we have a motion to continue, and I think after 10, maybe it's in our best interest to wrap it up, right?
Well, wouldn't we
that's-
have a motion at 9:30 to
Yeah,
extend it by a half hour and then at 10
that's
o'clock
what-
it's over?
that's what I anticipated we would do. Madam
Okay,
Clerk,
thank you.
does that make sense to you?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we spent approximately half an hour enclosed. So that means we can go to 9:30. We can extend for half an hour past curfew, and 10 o'clock would be the limit of the meeting.
Thank you.
All right, and if necessary, we may have to have a continuance, but can I get a motion to go into committee of the whole to deal with the planning items, please? Mover and second.
I'll move, Councillor
I'll move,
McEwen.
Councillor.
Yeah, I heard
I'll
Councillor
second Councillor
McEwen
Woods.
and move, and Councillor Woods second. And we're at
Thank you.
9:18 PM, and I'm trust that everybody is okay with this. Unless you all want to go home right now. Okay, so that brings us then. I apologize, I have to get my other screen, bring my other screen back to life here. Okay, I'm now in planning items. Got to get back to the beginning of them. We have a couple of consent applications to start off with. And hopefully they won't be too long. If it looks like we're getting bogged down, we can move them. We can always defer them, I guess. The first one, which is item 8.1, is a consent application that we talked about before. The applicant are the Buchinskis on their Offmore Drive, in behind that public storage kind of place. Want to develop 4 lots, and so what I'll do is I'll ask. We did have a discussion about this before. There were some unresolved issues. Our planner, John Jackson, is with us here, and I see his face now up on the screen, so I'll ask him to introduce this. At least fill us in on what's happened since the last time we talked about it.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Comrie. The last time the council looked at the Buzinski applications, it had 2 concerns. One was with respect to the frontage on the proposed lots 3 and 4, and the Ministry of Transportation comments. Mr. Brzezinski has agreed to increase the size of the frontage of the lots to meet the zoning requirement of 60 meters, and the Ministry of Transportation has indicated they have no objection as long as the right-of-way is shared along the existing driveway. And Mr. Brzezinski has no problem with that.
So if I can summarize, you are, Mr. Jackson, you are suggesting that we're good to go with this then? Is that the?
Correct.
So questions or comments from councilors? Anybody have any concerns about this? If the answer is no, you notice that there's a proposal that there are now 6 conditions attached to it, if I'm correct, right? if there aren't any, what we'll do is we'll go after we get out of committee of the whole, sorry, we will take motions on this, but can I interpret silence as your consent to go, or your agreement to go on to the next item? All right. The next one is, I think, an application from, no, sorry, I bounced over 8.2 here. The applicant is, sorry, is it Ed Bennett? Yes. All right, so let's move on to that particular one. And once again, John Jackson, could you walk us through this?
Yes, the proposal here is to create 2 new lots on Bennett's Bay at the end of Macy Drive. And the lots have sufficient area and frontage to comply with the requirements of the municipality's policies and zoning requirements. The one wrinkle with respect to this application is the retained lands are on the north side of the flooded bay, where there is an extensive environmental protection area. There's some indicators that the flooded areas that show aquatic vegetation may have some eligibility to qualify for a dock, but it's our recommendation that any approval of this require proper evaluation for the retained lands in terms of the critical fish habitat that might exist. So we put that as a condition. Under the new rules, the applicants have 2 years to fulfill it. So typically such evaluations are undertaken after June 15th when aquatics are grown. So we are putting that as a condition where we might otherwise have deferred it, but that can be determined as part of the provisional consent if council so chooses.
Okay, thank you. I was just looking through trying to identify on which of those maps we could see the actual 4 lots. And can you suggest to me which one of those diagrams that?
Yeah, so it's actually 3 lots, 2 new lots and the retained lands.
Oh, okay,
And-
sorry.
And I think the proposed consent sketch illustrates proposed lot 1 and proposed lot 2 on the south shore of this point or peninsula. The retained lands have the frontage around the back bay.
Oh, okay, sorry. Now I see it. Now I see where you're looking. And that's on page 46 of 247, if anybody else is.
It
It's
also,
a small diagram, so yeah, I understand now where they are. Okay, so once again, questions from or comments from councilors about this one?
So, yeah, just a quick comment. So the two lots are fine. The third lot, before it would be allowed to be built on, there'd have to be an environmental kind of assessment. Is that correct, John?
yes, you've got it. Correct.
Okay, thank you. Other than that, it meets all the criteria, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I guess the question is there any thought that retained lands, which are quite large, might be subdivided further at some point?
My sense through your worship is no. It's sort of going to complete the potential of any available lands for development.
Because a good chunk of that large retained land, in fact, has other waterfront lots in front of it, right? It actually isn't waterfront, am I right? In saying that?
Well, the peninsula had half a dozen lots already accessed off of Macy Drive.
Yeah,
So
that's,
there's no more clean frontage, if I can qualify
yeah,
it that.
that's what sorry, that's the good way to put it. That's what I'm asking. Yeah, all right, thank you. Are there other comments or questions? Going once? Oh, sorry, I see that it looks like, is that Lynn Brennan has her hand up? Are you asking to,
Yes, it is.
go ahead, Lynn.
I wasn't sure whether we were allowed to speak at this time.
No, this is, if you want to speak, this is the time.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure council was aware that the Cottage Association or Lake Wawashkesh Conservation Association submitted comments on this proposal. And one of them was because concerned with the retained lot, not the other two lots, but the retained lot, that perhaps it be suggested to be put under site plan control, which is what is stated in the official plan under Wawashkesh, that's possible to do.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Can you respond, John, please? John Jackson?
Yes, certainly through your worship, that's available for council for any lot on the recreational lakes. So council can do that at its discretion at any time. It doesn't have to be a condition of approval.
So we wouldn't necessarily add that to the conditions that are the three conditions that are already there on the motion under 8.2 when we get to it.
Correct.
I'm sorry, are you suggesting we should add it or?
No, you don't need to add it. If council chooses to apply site plan control on any property on Wawashkesh, they can.
But you're saying you can do it afterwards if the,
Yeah.
after it goes through the board,
Yes.
planning board? Okay. All right. Sorry, there are actually five conditions. I apologize. I didn't see they were up on the next page. Okay, next one is.
Mr. Mayor, can you do the extension? It's 9:30.
Yes, I can. Just 1 second. A motion to extend curfew that council hereby continues its council meeting past the allotted time of 3.5 hours and continue for an additional 1/2 hour. Mover and seconder, please.
I'll move it,
I'll
Councillor
move,
Lamb.
Council.
Oh, was
I'll
Councillor
second,
McEwen
sorry.
seconded?
No, it was Councillor Woods, Mr. Mayor.
Or Councillor Woods? Oh, all right, thank you. Is anyone opposed to continuing? All right, we're continuing. So the next one is 8.3. The applicant is Miller. Mr. Jackson.
Yes, the proposed consent here would create 2 new lots fronting on Highway 124, but accessed off of an existing right-of-way known as Beaver Dam Road that is a requirement of MTO. So the Millers who own the property have gotten pre-cleared from MTO, who have indicated that as long as they're accessing off of Beaver Dam Road, they will have no objections. They meet the rural requirements for size and area. And there are no constraints on them.
And these lots front onto Beaver Dam Road for all intents and purposes, but they're not water. They don't front onto water, correct?
No, that's correct.
Mr. Mayor,
Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, just for clarification, John, I think Mr. Miller or the Millers own Beaver Dam Road, did they not?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, one question.
Go ahead, please. Councillor
Mr.
McEwen.
Jackson, that being a private road and they're going back in the width or the length of those lots, is that not maybe like a back lot almost scenario in terms of the road right of way into the back of those properties?
Because they have frontage on a public road, even though they don't actually use that frontage to access, they meet the policy requirement in a technical manner. Which we've done on a number of occasions before. It's just the MTO's method of protecting all of its entrances off of its highways.
Okay. So they have a 5126 on the little section of road then to be entered into?
I don't think that was a condition, but was it a condition on the draft approval? It could be. It would make sense.
Like it recognizes the private road part of it.
Yeah, I think it would be a logical condition to add, your worship, just to add a fourth, that the applicants enter into a 5126 consent agreement to recognize the private access.
Okay, thank you for that. Please remind me when we get back to the motions in a minute. I have it on a screen and not paper in front of me, and I don't want to take the time and trying to go in and edit it. So the next one, oh, sorry, I should ask, are there any other comments or questions about this one before we move on? Okay, this brings us, that's the last one before we get to the official plan amendment. So we are now prepared to talk about number 8.4. And I did receive some correspondence from people saying, oh, you're not going to approve this tonight, or you're not going to formally approve this official plan amendment, pass any bylaw or anything. And I did reply to them saying, I think this is not in the cards for tonight. I don't think it was ever in the cards for tonight. What's happening now is our planner is bringing back some suggested, some suggested modifications and conditions related to the one particular amendment, at least. And so I'll turn it over to him, John, to introduce this and tell us what he's done since we last discussed it, and then we'll open the floor up to discussion for the half hour or so we have left.
Okay, very briefly, most of that is explained in my brief supplementary report to the council, but I took all the submissions from the public meeting and the written submissions, and I made the criteria more robust in terms of responding to the concerns of the submissions. And just in a general way, I think that those more robust criteria should satisfy a lot of the submissions. It does not make the process in any way a simple one, but it would protect all the concerns and the interests of the municipality as well as the ratepayers. So if there's any further comments on it, Your Worship, I would welcome them to make further submissions to council. But now that you have it and the public has it, we probably should schedule it for an agenda that has the ability to look at those criteria. Thank you.
All right. I guess the floor is now open. And I'll start with any councillors who have issues or questions they want to ask for further issues, and then I know there are members of the public here who have comments, so we'll get to them in a sec. If any councillor wants to go first, councillors, you can go anytime you want, but
Yes, Mr.
Yeah,
Mayor.
Okay. go
Councillor
ahead.
Gorham Matthews, I saw first.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm not sure if this is supposed to be part of what we're discussing now, or if this would come in later in a bylaw, but for under the trailers, a couple things I think we should add would be ensuring that there's good access to wherever the trailer is parked. That I think we should include 911 addressing and ensuring that the road where the trailer is accessible for fire and ambulance, so that people, if they are using their trailer for an extended period of time, they're able to be found easily. And I'm not sure if that's part of this or if it's something that should be added later. And the other thing was, when I was reading it over with regards to trailers, is about septics and gray water and such. I didn't see anything where we're discussing that we should have septics or like a gray water tank or something for the trailers to hook up to. Just because if it is an area that's on the waterfront and they're using their trailer, we want to ensure that there isn't a runoff or there's a solid plan for septic waste. And then my other remark regarding trailers is, I'm just not sure we need the 30 days. I don't know that's what you had before and you thought that was a good number. But for anybody that uses a trailer, I think they'd all argue that 30 days is rather inconvenient. And that would be my other comment with regards to those. I'll let anybody else talk about trailers if they want first.
Yeah, perhaps I should have said we should maybe have confined our comments to trailers first, just so we're not talking about a whole bunch of different things. But when we had the original discussion way back when we actually looked at the trailer, when we had a trailer bylaw and we were revising it, that was an issue that was raised. And what was happening was people would go to the 30 days, and if somebody called them on it, essentially they would leave for a week or something, and they would move the trailer to some other piece of property or park it on somebody's farm or do something, and then then when it was finished, they would when the 30 days or when the week was up, they would come back and put it back on the lot for another 30 days. So I don't know. I remember that discussion. I don't remember how we tried to resolve it, but are there any other comments about trailers or any response from our planner as to what you basically haven't changed a lot of things with respect to trailers, correct?
No, you're correct, Your Worship. There is the requirement for meeting wastewater criteria. I'll have to check the 911 addressing, but the minutiae or the details are in the trailer bylaw, which is in some detail. And the 30 days was described as in a calendar year. So presumably the permission would be cataloged, and if you did try and use some kind of loophole, that cataloging would correct or at least enforce that 30-day in a calendar year control, which seemed during this process to be a satisfactory time period, at least from the municipality's perspective, as far as enforcement and use was concerned.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay, Councillor Lamb, go ahead.
Yeah. This of course goes way back. I remember the trailer bylaw, and we got caught unfortunately in the official plan being not being in conflict with the trailer bylaw, so we had to revoke it, right? I can remember in the past asking, and this is some years ago, the bylaw inspector as to what issues we had with the 30-day sort of, and the trailer bylaw in its entirety. And I can remember his answer being very little. People were complying. There were some exceptions when the trailer bylaw went in that people were paying $20 a month or something, and they were sort of grandfathered. But you know, as I understand this policy, it's to let people enjoy their property that they haven't built on, but not to set it up so that the trailer becomes the end result of what they're going to do in their property. And the history of it, of course, is back in the 80s and 90s, when before there was a trailer bylaw in the early 2000s, that's what people were doing. They were setting up their trailers and staying there, right? And you know, some trailers are good, others are very unsightly and can be unsightly. And I think the 30 days is necessary in the community. So I don't support, you know, unlimited use of trailers. I think it's short-sighted from a municipal standpoint. And again, you look at the history here, we're simply putting back in place, you know, what existed. And to John's point, the gray water issue is covered. So I'm all for it as sort of proposed by Mr. Jackson. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor
Mr. Mayor.
McEwen, did you have a comment?
Yeah,
Question?
Mr. Jackson, included in this, if I remember the conversation going back a while, was other uses, alternate uses besides actual trailers on the properties. And it even would include tenting on a property type thing. Is there some, does the bylaw cover more than just a trailer per se? I'm just looking through
Yes.
quickly here.
It would cover motorhomes, campers, and trailers. So it would include the full gambit. And keep in mind, it's applicable only to vacant lots that have nothing on them. So a person can have a trailer on their property for storage or as an accessory use. So it doesn't affect those rights. Those rights are to continue. This is simply a temporary usage on a property for a finite period of time.
Mhm. As I recall, we had an inquiry as to why 30 days was like an upset time. It seemed to me it was on Wawash Cache or some places. Inquiry came from. They were wondering if maybe it could be increased to 30 days. 30 days broken into weekends gives you 15 weekends, 12 weekends, just whatever. But you can't leave your trailer there during the week. I think their concern was that if it was, say, 60 days, at least over a 2-month period, you could occupy your property without moving the trailer every so often, which probably is not going to happen unless it's policed some way, which is the other downside to it. Do you recall that inquiry?
Yeah, there were many submissions, some of which were in support of a longer period of time, some of which didn't support them at all. So we had a full spectrum, but we took the lead from the bylaw enforcement people who felt that the 30-day was a workable number in terms of giving property owners some entitlement, but encouraging them in the long run to move towards a stick-built, if I can call it that, kind of dwelling arrangement for the protection of adjoining properties. If you park something on a property like a trailer or an automobile, it just naturally tends to deteriorate over time. So it was a balance that we had provided based on all the inputs that we received.
Okay. I know, as I recall, Magnetawan was one place I saw them being specific on wastewater measures. Where would that go in terms of coming up with a conditional system, say on a vacant property?
Well, you need a permit, and one of the permit requirements is that you meet the wastewater requirements of the building code. And that may include a blackwater storage facility built into the trailer, or it may mean some other kind of system, whether it's a class 1 to 4 with respect to wastewater and a gray water pit. So there's a variety of mixes and matches that could occur. So it would all be subject to the permission process.
So we should be diligent then to make sure we have permits, and this is one of the conditions of the permit then.
Correct.
For any vacant land use. Okay. Thank you.
So I have a question, which is, I guess really the question is there a difference between somebody wanting to tent on their property versus someone wanting to use a trailer?
It is, there's a different threshold for tenting in terms of what's required for permission. So the building code has a requirement for a certain size tent to be permitted under the building code, which is usually an area. I think that in most cases, if someone was just using a property for a weekend and they're using it responsibly, they're not going to really have complaints by neighboring property owners. But if it's used on a sustained basis that has the attendant kind of articles that often build up, we're going to hear about it, and then we're going to be required to force our regulations regarding the use issue. So it doesn't have to be that way if someone comes in for a weekend, enjoys the property in a tent arrangement for what I call very low impact usage, and carted away in late Sunday afternoon. So we have the ability to control that if it gets out of hand.
Okay, but what is if somebody is doing that and causing a disruption in some way or making an eyesore, sort of, what is what regulation or law or bylaw have they offended?
Zoning use.
Okay, so it's a zone.
Tent wouldn't be a permitted use on its own for any extended period of time.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Mayor, that's something that's a little bit loose, though, I think. I know of a couple locations where people have had trailers used repeatedly and continuously. And I think they've even attempted through the bylaw until we come up with some sort of rules for them. I think it's going to be an ongoing issue in some spots. I don't know what kind of control you could look at, Mr. Jackson, in terms of, if it's an eyesore, you go to your, does the bylaw enforcement officer have some guidance that he can use?
Again, it's more when it crosses sort of an abuse kind of arrangement. I have had municipalities lay charges against extended tent type uses. In one case, someone put a tent platform up, left the tent there on a year-round basis, put a thunderbox in place, and it collected all kinds of upset neighbors. So we ended up charging them under the zoning bylaw.
Okay,
so
thanks.
strictly on a complaint basis then, eh?
Yeah.
In that
Yeah.
instance, yes.
Okay, so if there are no other questions regarding tents or trailers, I
Mr.
guess
Mayor,
oh, Councillor Woods, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just have one quick one.
Yeah.
I've received a few calls from people today, actually, about the trailers. Not one was about them on vacant property, vacant waterfront property, and would anybody that placed them on the waterfront properties, after we pulled the bylaw requirement, that placed them on there since then, would they be able to leave them there the way that they have been? Because I know it's an issue over on Dubois Lake. It was the one person that phoned me, and another person, it wasn't about on vacant property, but they questioned how many trailers someone would be allowed to have on a waterfront property that has a cottage on it, a small patch of land. Like, could people have 4 and 5 trailers that they leave there on a year-round basis? And is there anything that we can do about that? Is there any rules regarding that?
If I can, Your Worship, to that question, you're talking about a circumstance again, which is a bit on the gray side of what zoning's all about. And the question would be, is the placement of a multiple number of trailers in keeping with the ancillary or accessory use of a trailer on a single detached dwelling zone? I know, for example, there was an island, a small island out on Georgian Bay that 3 cruisers owners applied to place their large boats on, and the municipality prosecuted them for violating the residential zoning, and they were convicted because they crossed that imaginary line of not being a detached dwelling use. It was actually sort of a mini club or commercial type use. So it would be an instance where you would have to investigate whether that imaginary line would have been crossed and it violated the zoning. So it's back to use. Is the use within the keeping of the zoning? So it's a bit subjective, but that tool is there.
Okay, thank you. I can at least that way give the person that called me an answer. Thanks, John. I appreciate that.
All right. Is there anything else on trailers before we move on?
I had questions.
Montgomery.
Montgomery.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I see your hand up, Lynn. I wasn't sure if that was for this subject or the next one, but go ahead.
It was.
Yeah.
Is it a 30 consecutive day use? Or can it be a weekend here and a weekend there for a trailer? That's my first question. My next point is, Mr. Jackson says that, it can be done through zoning, but is it currently in our zoning bylaw? Or is it something that has to be put in place? And thirdly, what about wastewater and gray water for trailers that are on lots that do have buildings? What's in a zoning bylaw to make that done properly?
If I can answer those questions, I believe the bylaw that is in place for trailers, not yet properly activated, is for 30 continuous days in any one calendar year. The control over whether the additional use of a trailer as an accessory building would be a building code issue in terms of servicing, and that would have to be done through the building department. And the condition in the trailer bylaw sets out the requirement that you must comply with any wastewater rules that are in place. So all of those questions are actually in the zoning as well as the trailer bylaw.
My point, I thought it was only for vacant lots, though. It wasn't for trailers on lots that already had a building.
Well, no, if I could clarify that, the middle question was, what are the service implications for accessory trailers? And those are all dependent upon the situation of where and how they're used on an individual property. So if they are connected to a wastewater system, they have to comply with the building code.
And if they're not connected?
They're there for storage or accessory use, and they're likely not to need any kind of special permission.
Okay, does that answer the question?
Yes, thanks.
All right. If there's nothing else about trailers, I'm looking at the clock here and we are just coming up on 10 o'clock, which is when the end of our curfew extension. I am wondering, and I certainly apologize to those of you who have been sort of waiting, wanting to discuss backlot related issues, but I'm thinking that we may need to hold this over because there's really not going to be enough time to have a discussion on that. We're going to have to hold it over to another meeting as we are with some other items that are on the agenda. But I wondered if maybe what we could do is go for the consent agendas that we discussed, which didn't seem to be controversial. If we could just return to regular council and pass those first few applications. So could I get a motion to reconvene to regular council, please?
I'll make the motion, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb, seconded by,
I'll second, Councilor
I'll
McEwen.
second, Council.
I think I heard Councillor McEwen first. Meeting reconvened to regular council at 9:58 p.m.
Mr. Mayor, it's Helen Malaby Hicks speaking. Before you reconvene to regular council,
Go ahead, please. But did you?
before you reconvene to regular council, we would appreciate some advance notice of when you're going to reconvene. We've had very short notice in receiving the report and having to respond to it, having only received it on Friday and having to respond to it today. And on behalf of the Watercraft Conservation Association, we will be responding more formally, but we would like to have a prior indication of timeline and advance notice so that we can provide our response. And we would request that there be a decent amount of time and not just a few short days of notice once we receive a report.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. We'll see that happens. So if I don't hear any objection, I'll assume that we are agreeable to reconvening the regular session. And now if I could.
Sorry, Mayor Combry, I just wanted to, raise the concern that many of us.
I'm sorry, who is speaking?
Hi, it's Paul Woods here. I'm sorry for jumping in. Many of us have sat here for 3.5 hours waiting to discuss this really important issue, and the idea that we'd run out the clock listening to the kind of squabbling that we did for the first period, and then are left not really knowing where we are or when we'll hear the rest of it. It's the first meeting I've attended in its entirety, and it's hard for me to express my disappointment at the way this thing has unfolded. So I'd just like you to be mindful of all of our time and how can we do this better next time?
Well, I apologize, but the fact is we had a heavier than normal agenda, and perhaps we should have modified the agenda in advance. But I guess that's The only comfort I can give you perhaps is that it was intended to be a time for discussion. Nobody is trying to ram anything through without people having the opportunity. And as I mentioned earlier, I did respond to some people who said, gee, are you going to pass a bylaw tonight and cast this thing in stone? And my response to them was, no, that's not the
No,
intention.
I appreciate the good faith. I just wanted to note that after a long day, it's pretty hard to sit here and listen to all of that and not get to the meat of what's concerning, I'm sure, a huge number of the 60 people on this call.
Right. Your point is taken. And again, all I can do at this stage is apologize. I did think we would get through the planning, but so again, if you'll just spare with me for another couple of minutes here, we have a motion with respect to 8.1, which was the consent application from the Wyszynskis. And it reads, whereas John Jackson Planner has prepared a report for the Parry Sound Area Planning Board, and so on, which is presented to council on January 17th, 2022. And whereas he also prepared a some supplementary report dated February 3rd for information. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the council of the municipality of Whitestone receives this supplementary report for information, and that the council of the municipality of Whitestone recommends this consent application for approval in principle, subject to the following conditions. And there are 6 of them. I'll read them to you. Number 1, that payment of a parkland dedication fee be made in accordance with the current municipal fees and charges bylaw. 2, that the new lots receive 911 addressing from the municipality. 3, that the newly created lots be rezoned to the rural residential zone. 4, that a clearance letter be obtained from the Ministry of Transportation with respect to the shared entrance in regards to severed lots 3 and 4. 5, that the owners of proposed lots 3 and 4 into a section 5126 agreement to confirm the status of the right-of-way to be shared by beneficiaries of the right-of-way, setting out the obligations and responsibilities for use of the right-of-way. And number 6, that payment of all applicable planning fees be made to the municipality of Whitestone. Would someone move and second that, please?
I'll move, Councillor
Councillor
Woods.
Woods.
Okay, I heard Councillor McLean move, Councillor Woods second. Is that okay?
Fine by me.
Is there any further discussion? If not, could I have the, I'll ask, you know what, we'll try a quick way. Does anyone have any objection to approving this motion? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to declare it carried. We'll save us a little bit of time here.
It's recording.
The next one is item 8.2, which was the Bennett application. Whereas John Jackson Planner has prepared a report dated February 3rd for the Parry Sound Area Planning Board regarding consent application B01/2022 Whitestone, and provided a copy to the municipality of Whitestone. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the council of the municipality of Whitestone receives this report as information, and that the council of the municipality of Whitestone recommends this consent application for approval in principle, subject to the following conditions. And there are 5 of them. That payment of a parkland dedication fee be made in accordance with the current municipal fees and charges bylaw. 2, that the new lots receive 9911 addressing from the municipality. 3, that the retained lot be evaluated by a qualified fishery biologist to confirm that an area for a dock is available for the 2 near waterfront lots. 4, that the applicant enter into a section 5126 agreement with the municipality of Whitestone to be registered on title to the effect that the owners of the severed lots recognize that access is by a private right-of-way. And 5, that payment of all applicable planning fees be made to the municipality of Whitestone. Would someone move that, please?
I'll move it, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you. Seconded by?
I'll second, Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Woods. Any discussion? Is there any opposition to this motion?
Oh, Mayor Comrie,
Yes,
wasn't this the one where there'd been a suggestion that there would be a site plan for the retained lot?
thank you. Thank you, Councillor Gorman Matthews. Sorry, that the retained lot be subject to site plan control. Is that, is Mr. Jackson still here? No. He escaped. That's what the condition is, I believe, right? That,
Mr. Mayor, excuse me, I thought he said it didn't have to be in this resolution though.
okay, what was the one? I'm sorry.
It
I'm
was
just
the
looking.
Miller one.
It was the Miller one. You're absolutely right. I'm sorry. You're correct. It is the, it was the Miller one.
I was the Bennett one. It was the one that was questioned by public, but anyway.
Well, I raised the question, but he said, oh yeah, you can put it on it. You can put site, you can establish site plan control at any time. So again, I'll ask, is there any objection to the motion? Okay, that's carried. Let's do the last one, and then we'll close up here. This is the Miller one, whereas John Jackson Planner has prepared a report dated February 3rd, 2022 for the Parry Sound Area Planning Board regarding consent application B03 2022 Whitestone, and provided a copy to the municipality of Whitestone. Now therefore be it resolved that the council of the municipality of Whitestone receives this report as information and recommends this consent application for approval in principle, subject to the following conditions. I only see three here. One is the payment of a parkland dedication fee be made in accordance with the current municipal fees and charges bylaw. Two, that the new lots receive 911 addressing from the municipality. Three, that payment of all applicable planning fees be made to the municipality of Whitestone. And number four was, somebody help me here.
Yeah,
Was it
5126 agreement, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, that, okay, that was with respect to the use of the private road. That, let me see the wording of the, okay, but the wording is, I'll just grab it off somewhere else here, that the owners of the proposed lots enter into a section 5126 agreement to confirm the status of the right-of-way to be shared by beneficiaries of the right-of-way, setting out the obligations and responsibilities for use of the right-of-way. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
5126. Okay, any further discussion? Anyone opposed to this motion? It's carried. And that then lets us go to, you stop me if I'm skipping over anything else that is absolutely necessary between now and next week, but I think we are at our confirming bylaw we need to do. Can I get a mover and seconder for the confirmatory bylaw?
I will move, Council.
I'll move.
Councillor McEwen, and the seconder was
It was Councillor Woods, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Woods. Thank you very much. Anyone opposed to that bylaw? And would someone like to move adjournment, please?
All adjourned.
I'll move, Councillor Woods.
Okay, Councillor Gorham Matthews moved and Councillor Woods seconded. And once again, I'm assuming that no one is opposed to that motion. And I thank you all for your patience and perseverance. Have a good evening. We will pick up some of the topics that we have at our meeting that is planned for the afternoon of February 2nd. That's the next, it's a budget meeting, not a sort of regular meeting, and we will provide to folks a date when we will pick up the other matters.
It's the
So-
22nd, isn't it? Not the 2nd, or did I miss?
I'm
hearing loss.
sorry, I think I said that I tried to say the 22nd, but yeah, that's that's next Tuesday, a week from today. It's a meeting at 2:00 in the afternoon, and it's the first sort of look at that we're having at the 2022 budget. So that's the main thing, and we will pick up the staff reports, some of which have to do with that budget anyway. So we'll amend the agenda to include those things. And you'll get it you'll get it in advance this week. So
I think people ought to know that next Tuesday afternoon, we're not going to discuss OP2. A lot
No.
of people work, right?
no, I'm sorry. Thank you for making that clear, but it's not my intention to try to tack that on to that meeting because it's not enough notice and it's not a good time for some members of the public to participate. So we'll come up with another date for that and circulate it to everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Have a good evening.
Good night.
Good night.